If you're just watching the stream and it's after the live, I would recommend you forward this about 5-10 minutes to get to the action. Till then, I'll just be waiting about 5 minutes for some of the folks to come in. And typically the stream is done Saturday at 7, but I make it an exception today because I got plans tomorrow. Okay. Mr. Pitt liked the video. Big shout out to Mr. Pitt. He must be here somewhere. Stream. And we're going to be watching I Infiltrated the Manosphere by Shanosphere. Or Shanspeare. That should be fun. So I'll give it another few more minutes, and once the folks come in, we will get started. For those who are watching now on Twitter and Twitch, appreciate you guys for coming in on there. I do a bad job of keeping up with the Twitch. I do want to go on Twitch and play video games exclusively, but every time I think about playing a video game or buying a video game, I know deep down I'll probably play it twice and then not finish it. So it seems pretty cruel to start a video game, get people invested in the story, and then not actually finish playing it. At least for the viewers. I sadly do that way more than I probably should. Colonel Buckshot, the Mano Swamp. Well, that's what we're going to be learning about today here. So yeah, maybe we'll learn something new from this person, Shanspeare, going into the Manosphere and see what her observations are. So we might come in here and all be better men for it. Welcome in, Colonel Buckshot. I appreciate you in here, by the way. I'm just going to give it a few more minutes, see if we get another couple folks in here, and then I'll go ahead and start watching the video. And hey, if it's just you, then we'll watch it anyways. So just another few more minutes. I probably should get one of those stream starting screens, but to be honest, I don't know. I'm not a fan of those. I feel like as soon as I hit the stream button, I should just be here and ready for whoever decides to come. So, yo, Klaus, my good sir. Uh-oh, we're in trouble. Appreciate you coming in here, man. I know it's on a Friday night. I, for one, am kind of, I don't want to say I'm exhausted, but I'm a little tired. I had a pretty tough day at work today. I had to do a lifestyle shot and a lifestyle shoot for a specific product, and it was a lot tougher than I imagined, but it was good. We got some good shots, so I'm glad that's over. Colonel Buckshot says, I left most Manoswap channels. They got very weird. You know what? I don't blame you. And I think that's really good and healthy that you did that, honestly. It's funny, too, watching the Manosphere. There seems to be a lot of channels pivoting away. I mean, there's definitely been a bubble that's been popped when it comes to the Manosphere side of the internet. I do think there are some important things there, for sure. And ultimately, I do believe it's not going away and that there will be a kind of next iteration of it. With probably new faces and hopefully new talking points and different aims altogether. But that's interesting to hear that, and I think it'll dovetail nicely into this video that we're watching today. You know, I mean, this video got 34,000 likes, you know, 734,000 subscribers. Like, does that mean it's good? Not all the time. But, you know, there's got to be something about it that resonated with people. And, you know, so guys who watch Manosphere, that's me included. I mean, maybe we can be honest with ourselves and we can kind of learn a little something here. So I forgot that my image wasn't on there. I was on a discussion show, which I streamed to the channel. It's with the newer channel, but I had fun, so I had to use that screen. I had to take off my camera for that specific one, but I like Paul Elam content. Oh, nice. Maybe you found me from Paul Elam. He did a shout out for me on Twitter, and Paul and I are actually going to be having a discussion at the end of the month for his channel. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I've been looking at a lot more of his videos and stuff, and just trying to study and just certain things, just be really familiar with the material before we have that discussion. I'm really looking forward to that. I think it's going to be, something really good. It has the potential to be a very, very good discussion, especially with him. And I like this sort of communication between the generations. You know what I mean? Oh, Caesar. Yo, welcome in, Caesar. It is a pleasure to see you. And again, I appreciate the generosity and support of the channel. I feel like at this point I need to have a framed picture of you, like right here. I might have to go into your interview with Pearl, find a good screenshot, and just get a complimentary Caesar Quintana photo as a contributor. The greatest contributor to the channel. But again, thank you, and I hope this Friday is treating you well as everybody else in here. Yo, Dan the Man, Braylon Barnes. We got the folks in here. All right. I think, and Mr. Pitt, I don't know if Mr. Pitt's in here now, but he came in here earlier before the stream even started, and he left that comment. So he said like the video, which I appreciate, and hopefully we'll see Mr. Pitt in here later. But I think we can get started. We got the folks in here. It's been a long day for me. The reason I'm doing the stream today is because I'm going to San Francisco tomorrow. It's a buddy's birthday, and then I got a date in Berkeley. So that's outside of San Francisco, but it'll be on my way back. So that's going to be at 7 p.m. So I'm going for my buddy's birthday at 2. Should be pretty cool. And then on the way back, I'm going to go stop by a nice rooftop lounge in Berkeley and see what happens there. Oh, yo, Mr. Pitt. Mr. Pitt's in here. Yo, Mr. Pitt, big shout out to you. Thank you for being here. I appreciate, your support all the time. Caesar says, I got a mugshot when I got arrested in Ukraine. Oh my God, that would be perfect. That would be perfect. Like your framed mugshot. Though I'd understand if you didn't want to send it to me. I know maybe it's not your favorite picture. I get it. I'm not mad at you. It just reminds me of like the Trump mugshot. You know what I mean? Always a pleasure. All right. Well, Carol Bugs says, is it a date with the single mommy? No, it's not. No, it's not. Not that there's much. Well, it really depends on the situation. I did do a video on single moms, and I said single moms come on a spectrum, right? You got a single mom over here that, has a child and we don't know who the dad is and no one's, signed for this kid. Then you got single mom, that's been through a divorce and maybe has a really good job and got 50-50 custody with the ex-husband, and it isn't a terrible situation. And, hey, if you got kids of your own, then maybe that works. You got a kid, she's got a kid. Maybe that makes a happy family. I'm not against that. I'll share it. I'm proud of that picture. All right. I'll look forward to that in the Discord or wherever you choose to. On the floor laughing. All right. So, here is the video for today. So I don't know who Shan Spear is. She's obviously a big creator. And, I want to go into this with positivity. Maybe she's going to point things out that we really need to hear. Maybe she's going to make some good points, 34,000 likes. I know it's not about the numbers, but there's got to be something in here. And before we started the video, I just wanted to take a moment to observe the thumbnails because we got all the characters in here. You know what I mean? Mr. Princess, you gonna talk to your date about a dowry? You know, hey, I'll tell you what. If marriage is brought up, then maybe I'll have to go there. But if that's not pushed on me so quick and I don't feel pressured, you know, like, where's this going? So what are you looking for? Where's this going? You know, don't you want to settle down? If I get that, then that's where the conversation's going to have to go. So hopefully not. Gosh, I feel like, God, you know, I told myself I wasn't going to bring up the dowry in this stream, but I'm sorry if I bring it up. It's just, it's hard not to. Anyway, so we got our cast of characters here. Now, the first thing I noticed is we got Jordan Peterson. I was a little surprised by that because I feel like, you know, Jordan's Jordan, but I don't feel like he's as toxic as, like, you know, maybe some of the other folks on here. You know what I mean? So, you know, he got the top spot. We got Jordan Peterson. I think all of us can remember our sort of journey with Jordan Peterson, especially as he was getting big. I think all of us was there. That was before Andrew Tate. That was before Myron. It's some of these before Kevin Samuels. Peter says yes. More talk on the dowry. Yeah, it's becoming a part of me at this point. I didn't see rolled up Tomley in that thumbnail. Well, yeah, so that's the interesting thing, right? So I think this can tell us, you know, and one thing I'm glad to see Brian from whatever podcast. I feel like Brian gets away with a lot. Like he's the one guy that has managed to shimmy out of like everything. He's not demonetized. You know, I think, you know, he's still doing okay. Out of all these guys that are demonetized and not around, most of that stuff has probably gone straight to Brian's channel. So, you know, he's managed to navigate this and has a pretty lucrative channel. But I think it's fair to put him in here because he's definitely contributed to where we're at. Kevin Samuels, rest in peace to Kevin Samuels. Kevin Samuels, you know, we all respect Kevin Samuels. I don't know how I feel about this. You know, I think he was a good man. We got a sort of a bald head back here. So that could be anybody, right? I mean, that could be Rich Cooper. That could possibly be Joker. Hell, that could be Tim Pool without his beanie. You know, it could even be a Coach Greg Adams. Who else is bald in the Manosphere that I'm forgetting? That's probably about it. I mean, is Shannon Sharp? Nah, or not Shannon Sharp. Oh, that's the guy that had the IG leak. Donovan Sharp. That's the other guy. But anyway, so and then we got the KS told it like it was. He definitely did. Then we got the Tate brothers over here, and you know, this man right here is essentially the representation of hypermasculinity. He is the sort of opposite of the Barbie standard. He is the Barbie standard for men. We all know what's going on with them. It's not looking good. We know he was on the other side of the keyboard with the webcam models. And so here he is. And then we got Myron Gaines. I saw a thing on Twitter. Myron looks like he started another podcast with Sneeko and Fuentes there. And then I also saw Walter. Walter said he's starting a podcast. I think it was with Redbeard Rants or something like that. So they did a podcast together. That could signal a very possible split. You know, they probably won't, but it could signal them spending a lot less time together. Lead attorney. There it is. Yeah, that's the other bald guy. So plenty of bald folks to choose from. So anyways, yeah, let's go ahead and start watching this. I just wanted to take some time to appreciate that.
In late November of 2023.
Oh, God. Okay, yeah. And just by the way, I haven't watched any of this. So hopefully it's not going to be as big as a disaster as Dr. Bryant on Cam Newton's show. But this is probably going to be the next hour. And frankly, if I have to forward it, so rehashing the Matt Rife, we could probably just skip this right off the bat. Introducing Jordan Peterson, I think that's where we're going to go. History of the Manosphere. Okay, so she's thorough. Anatomy of the Manosphere. Pickup artists. Men's rights activists. Okay, now, I'll be honest. The men's rights activists are the folks I'm the most partial to. Okay, so I'm just saying, you know, I'm going to be very, very attentive to what she has to say here. Incels. Oh, come on. All right. What do we do? Okay, so she's trying to propose solutions. So we're going to see where this goes. We're going to just skip this right off the bat. I don't know who the hell Matt is. or what the issue is. This sounds like it has nothing to do with whatever we're talking about. So let's just get into introducing Jordan Peterson.
Obviously a lot to be analyzed about Matt Rife, but I'm not here to talk about him. Instead, I want to shift our brief focus to the man on his
I never heard about Matt Rife in my life. I don't know if he's part of the Manosphere. Maybe you guys know him.
left. This might be your first time meeting Dr. Jordan Peterson. God knows I wish it was mine. Peterson is a part of what's known as the intellectual dark web, a group of so-called academics who are vocally anti-leftists, especially when it comes to higher education. Jordan rose to prominence after campaigning against Canada's Bill C-16, which seeks to protect gender expression/identity from discrimination.
It's going to be interesting too, right? Because probably her conception of the Manosphere is going to like lump in tradcons, you know, with everybody else. And it's, you know, like she's got men's rights activists here. I'm interested to see where she's going to go. It's kind of long, so if we skip through it, please don't be mad.
Peterson's main argument was that this bill fell under compelled speech, and that it would force him and others to use someone's correct pronouns. If someone refused to do so, Jordan argued, they would be sent to prison.
And I think the most egregious elements of the policies are that it requires compelled speech. The Ontario Human Rights Commission explicitly states that refusing to refer to a person by their self-identified name and proper personal pronoun, which is the pronouns that I was objecting to, can be interpreted as harassment, and so that's explicitly defined in the relevant policies.
Well, that's interesting. So Matt was a comedian. He had a large female audience, and once he got big, he tried to pivot to the male audience. From what I remember, wonder why he did that. If it seems like if he was doing well, maybe just deep down he got tired of it, and who knows? Or maybe he thought there was more money with the male audience. It's all right. It's all right.
So I think that's appalling, first of all, because there hasn't been a piece of...
This is the Jordan Peterson we all remember. This is pre-Daily Wire Jordan Peterson, pre-Russia medical procedure Jordan Peterson.
Legislation that requires Canadians to utter a particular form of address that has particular ideological implications before, and I think that it's a line that we shouldn't cross. And then with regards to these human rights tribunals where all of this stuff would be sorted out, it's like those places destroy your reputation and destroy you financially. And can they put you in jail? Well, it's a complicated argument in some sense, but I can tell you that if you refuse to pay the fines, that's the next step.
What is this, 1984? Well, no. The bill makes no mention of pronouns and simply adds gender identity/expression to a list of other groups that are already protected from discrimination. Groups including race, religion, and disability. Experts note that jail is also highly unlikely and that misuse of pronouns would not be used as sole evidence of discrimination or hate speech.
Bill C-16 adds gender identity and gender expression to provisions in the criminal code that define an identifiable group for the purposes of advocating genocide.
This is an interesting history of Jordan Peterson. I might skip that and go straight to history of the Manosphere. To me, it's not exactly Manosphere related. I think she's just trying to, I don't know, start this off with painting the Manosphere as like this intolerant sort of bunch of guys. And that's where that seems like that's going. Mr. Pitt says, prison time for misgendering someone is wild. I could only imagine how that conversation would go with the other inmates. It's like that meme where there's like that big scary guy and then like that little dude, like, what are you in for? One guy's in there for something serious and the other guy's in there for, I misgendered someone. Okay, so let's just go to history of the Manosphere.
Let me set the scene for you. It's 2009. Party in the USA is leaking from every major speaker in the...
Oh, another thing, guys. I tried to set it to where there shouldn't be any ads. It should notify me if there's going to be an ad so I can skip it. My fear is that I've skipped so many ads, YouTube's caught on to me, and they're like, screw this guy, we're just going to make ads happen. I really hope that's not the case, but I did try for you guys.
Country to boost post-recession morale. Kanye West ignites a feud that would last a decade too long.
I'm gonna let you finish, but Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
And Michael Jackson inspires the most unhinged Nicki Minaj lyric in music history.
Like MJ Doctor, they killing me.
God damn it. Also in 2009, someone used the term manosphere for the first time ever. It came from a blogspot page named Ben and Jeff, who used this newly crafted circle of the internet to post about things they found interesting. That is, video games, sports, beer, the whole shebang. This early manosphere blog was aligned culturally with masculinity, but it didn't really.
I'd say for the poll, just like any changes, like do you think it should undergo a change? I keep hearing, and from what I can tell, it's in a transition phase. We see a lot of creators pivoting. There was this kind of almost implosion to some extent, especially between like with sort of Rollo's vasectomy tweet and that kind of stuff. So I just doesn't have to be anything specific. I mean, you can leave it in the comments if there's some kind of specific change you're referring to. I'm just curious how many people in the poll just think that there should be a change. Yo, Robert, welcome in, bro. Hey, Robert. Oh my God. So I was doing a lifestyle photo shoot today, and I went to the skate park behind the child support office because there's a lot of fun graffiti there. And I finally walked into the courthouse to take this picture at the Family Law Courthouse here in Sacramento. I'm going to show you the picture, but real quick, just to give a brief story. When I was working at the child support agency, I remember when I went into the courthouse for the first time, there was a sign on the left side of the wall, and it said, home of the original one-day divorce. Okay? And I always thought that was funny because I was like, why are they making divorce sound like it's a Big Mac or like a hamburger or something like that? Like, that's weird. And like the original Whopper or something like that. And I never understood until like I was studying no-fault divorce, and then I realized California was the first place in the United States that had no-fault divorce. And, this is in Sacramento where I'm at, the capital of California. So literally no-fault divorce happened here. I'm sorry. And anyways, I always wanted to get a picture of that for you guys because once I found that out, I was like, oh, I get it now. And I went in there today and that picture isn't there. But they do have another one because I talked to the guy and they changed the wording a little bit, but it does essentially say the same thing. So when you get to the reception desk, I took this with my cell phone today. Welcome to the Family Relations Courthouse. This sounds really funny. I don't know. I feel like everything's been changed to sound a little bit more nicer or PC or something. And then it says right here, home of the original one-day divorce program. I don't know why they added the word program. They should just take that out and leave it divorce. The graphic design at this place is terrible. I mean, for all the money that they're making, screwing people and destroying families, you'd think they would spend a little bit of extra money to make this look nice. But it's still there with the nasty piece of tape. So the guy was cool. He let me take a picture of it. So I had to share that with you guys because I just wanted this on record. You know what I mean? All right, back at it.
Last long. It killed over after just 10 posts, leaving behind only 9 followers. Who knows? Maybe they moved to Tumblr. When we talk about the manosphere, it feels like we're talking about something dangerously new, something that took us by surprise in 2017, held us hostage for a few years before being debunked by the very best video essayists.
Shout out my nigga Gucci. Shout out my nigga Gucci.
But Ben and Jeff's manosphere blog, however...
Debunked. See, and that's the interesting thing, right? It's like certain things are very useful. But I think, I would agree that there's been a certain kind of shock and awe, bread and circus style content creation going on in the manosphere that sort of lends itself to be made to look bad. Like, especially when it comes to things like Andrew Tate's case or, just some of the stuff you see all over where they can point the finger and paint the whole thing in one way or another. So, I don't know, debunked is kind of a stretch there.
Obsolete tells us something different. It tells us that there has been a desire for such space for a very long time. Obviously, we don't know who ran this page, if they were even a man, if they aligned with modern manosphere politics, hell, if they even know what the manosphere is today. But this blog...
It's interesting that she mentioned this. Like, I don't know how deeply she's really going to understand it. This is going to give us a... Yo, Will, welcome in, bro. Big shout out to you. Sorry, I fat fingered it. Good to see you, man. this is going to give us an understanding of probably what the normal people understand of it. And like, this is her attempt at a history, but it's probably not going to mention things like, you know, the Red Pill subreddit. It's probably not going to mention Paul Elam's A Voice for Men, you know, gynocentrism.com and all these things, all the Rouge V and So Suave and all that stuff. It's, you know, I would be surprised, but I don't think that's coming because we're almost to the end of her History of the Manosphere segment. So, I mean, she probably won't even say MGTOW once in here.
Reflects the same desire that the Manosphere claims to fulfill. The desire for a meeting ground.
Yo, me and this guy have a very similar hairstyle right now.
A digital man cave, where one can gather with like-minded individuals to express grievances and frustration. Now, let's take a little second to do a little yes and exercise. The internet loves talking about things in terms of black.
Oh, did you put a comment? Yeah, YouTube has some self-moderation stuff, so they're pretty strict about it.
Black and white, but that's not really the Shakespearean way. We have to be nuanced and honest about this topic, even if it feels unbearable. So, yes.
Well, we appreciate that. We appreciate her attempting to be nuanced and honest.
The Manosphere is a dangerous network that promotes and sustains misogyny, patriarchy, and just about every other discriminatory ism you can think of. And there's a reason why such a community has sustained itself for so long. Yes, the participants within this community are being radicalized into violent.
You know, and this is the thing, right? Like, I mean, these are some big accusations, like radicalized into violent. And this is where they have to lump the sort of incels into the rest of the manosphere. And this also highlights a problem with the manosphere, right? It's like the manosphere really is a loosely connected space of men. But when they find one segment of people doing something wrong, they will have no trouble painting the entire space with it, right? And that's where different creators have lended themselves to be excellent examples of some of these things even that she's talking about, you know? So it's kind of a shame. I wish there could be more of a collective sense of values or a little bit more men trying to work together with very defined goals. Because when there isn't, it lends itself to be sort of subverted in this way.
Far rightness. And they may have joined based on what they perceive is a valid reason. Keyword.
See, what they perceive.
They perceive.
What they perceive. So is it valid or not valid? The fact is, you know, guys have caught on at this point. You know, that they know that the deal sucks. It's not just about guys who can't get it in, who can't, you know, find a girlfriend or something like that. It's also about the long-term issues, especially when it comes to marriage and divorce and all these kinds of things. It comes with the oppressive child support program. I mean, it comes with false domestic abuse allegations. It comes with women taking half the jobs but not wanting to sign up for the draft. I mean, there's a lot of things, right? Like, it's funny, you know, because one thing that's always kind of struck me is that women like her will see the world as like taken over by patriarchy, and she needs to escape the patriarchy and all that stuff. Men on the other side see us under this kind of gynocentric order, right? So it's kind of funny, you know what I mean? Because we both kind of perceive it in this way. But yeah, Klaus is right. Here it comes. And it's like we have to be labeled with this. I do hope her what to do section has some decent answers. I'm giving her credit, you know what I mean? She's not coming swinging at us too hard, but, you know, so far she said some things that, you know, I can't jibe with. It's having an impact on women, or they wouldn't be crying about it. Exactly. And that in itself is the proof that we need. I mean, first of all, that there is some good coming out of this because it's having an impact and that men are doing something right. If you want to distill it down, you know, they say feminism is a shit test that we all failed. This is us trying to pass the shit test and the compliance test, so to speak. And it's working a little bit. Dan the Man, right off the bat, all of the isms. Oh, yeah, this is going to be filled with it. There are a lot of uncalibrated, dorky men out there for sure. Yeah, and that's true, you know, and it's probably true now more than ever. I mean, I kind of have this theory, and I call it Adolescence 2.0. And it sort of comes out of the fact that, like, you know, it used to be a long time ago when the economy in the world was different, that you were born, you lived in a house for a bit, then you started working on the farm, and probably right around puberty and that time, you'd get married, and then that's you, and you're doing good. Then it became this thing where there was like, okay, now you got to graduate high school. You know what I mean? You at least should get your diploma, and then things were good. Then it's like, okay, well, you got to do high school and you got to do college, and then things should be okay. Now it's like, you know, you got to do high school, you got to do college, and sometimes stuff after college, and then maybe when you're in your late 20s, you finally start to get it figured out. I call that part from like 18 to 27 Adolescence 2.0. And a lot of this sort of dorkiness and the stuff that we're dealing with and all these kinds of growing pains is that based off the super mega civilization that we live in, which is very compartmentalized, has very specialized occupations and things like that, it takes a long time for people to get out of adolescence into the mind frame of like a true adulthood like humans used to be a long time ago. So the dorkiness comes from this awkwardness. And the worst part is that we as a society haven't actually figured this out yet. So we're lacking in good guidance to give people of that age. Robert's hoping for the pole dance. Now, I remember Will last time was captivated by Dr. Bryant. We'll see what he has to say. The best message is for men to focus on themselves early in their careers. Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's like, I think what happens is a lot of guys have this pressure on them that they think they need to have these things way earlier than they actually do. And that to me comes from an ignorance of this Adolescence 2.0 that I'm trying to propose here. Once we accept that, like, no, it actually takes this long, then a guy who's like 20 and not sure can be like, well, you know, I guess it's more normal now, in a sense. You know, some people are going to be straight shooters. Some guys are going to figure it out. But most of us aren't going to figure this out until we're like 30. And then if I can add on to that, Colonel Buckshot, I'd also say once you do work on yourself and figure it out, then you have to understand what the negotiation is, right? You have to understand, how can I not leverage this in the most over-leveraged, you know, to try to be risk averse when it comes to actually having like long-term relations with women. And I say that distinctly from like short-term, just, you know, being out there with them. All right.
Not me. They.
Despite being well explored, the Manosphere is still complicated to map out. It doesn't just exist on one platform, it doesn't share the same roster, and it's broken up into various niches.
Okay, look at that. Okay, so I'll give her some credit. She put MGTOW, she got MRAs, she had to put the incels here, she had to put the pickup artists. Now she has this linked, which seems like it could almost be a timeline, but I don't think that's the case. This is just a constellation. No darkiness here. I have several ex-strippers under my belt. Definitely less curvy than this arrogant chick. Oh, man. Well, it sounds like you got some stories, Robert. Definitely got some stories. You know what? I went to the doctor yesterday, actually. And I went in for an annual checkup. And, you know, I always go in there because, you know, I got out of a relationship in July. And the only reason I thought to call was because I was like, you know, I want a full STD panel just to have a clean bill of sale. Like, just to be like, if anyone's like, have you gotten tested? I'd be like, yes, I did. Did you? But I went in there and I talked to this doctor for a while about just funny things. And he was a pretty cool guy. He said, like, in his 30s, he worked at a bar. He didn't actually go to, like, school again until he was in his 40s, which was hilarious. But he was telling me all about his 30s working at a bar and, like, just the kind of wild life he was living and stuff like that. And it sort of reminds me a little bit of what you're talking about there. Yo, Sassy Attitude, big shout out to you. Sassy Attitude's actually a moderator on my Twitch stream, and she's been watching me for a while. Please do forgive me for not doing any gaming streams for years, but I promise someday I will be back to the Twitch gaming streams. Pleasure to have you in here.
How can you challenge something so scattered? How do you decide what is militant?
Yo, SD New For You. Well, we got everybody showing up tonight. SD New For You is actually I know who that is. I remember that username, and this man is very integral into this channel. He really helped me in the beginning with trying to figure out, you know, how to get my computer stuff figured out and all these kind of things. So big shout out to SDN for you. I mean, without him, we'd be nowhere. Sassy says, what did you just call me? You were a moderator. You ruled the chat box with a heavy hand. I mean, nobody got away with anything. And I appreciate that.
And organized discrimination, and what's a random dude with a microphone?
The manosphere is connected by shared politics and language. They prize...
To be honest, a random dude with the microphone is not unlike a random woman with the microphone. So, you know, we're both kind of doing the same thing.
Pseudoscience and bioessentialism, which is just fancy talk for climate change.
Yo, Mr. Pitt, thanks for subscribing on the Twitch. Sounds like you're into the gaming, which I appreciate. God, also, if anybody does a text-to-speech donation and it doesn't come, just like, please tell me so I can shout it out. I can see it on the back end. I don't know if that actually works. No pressure for that. Yo, JP, welcome in, bro. Man, we got everybody in tonight. This is great. Big Shah, hope you've been doing well. Glad to tune in Friday night. Running errands, but listening in. Hey, I appreciate you listening, man. I appreciate you being here and supporting. I do wish you well running errands. Maybe you'll go to the grocery store and find some amazing things there. So let us know how that goes. Hey, Sassy, are you single? We don't know. We don't know that. We don't know.
And real. And double X chromosomes. And you own a bank account? Wait!
I thought you were asking if she was single. Very possible.
The manosphere is also defined by its endemic misogyny, racism.
See, yeah, so she's making it seem like, you know, a lot of us just get angry if we see a woman with a job. It's not really, that's not really an issue. An issue is when a woman has that, but then expects a man to make, you know, twice as much as her when it comes to something like marriage, or doesn't want to contribute 50-50, or, you know, wants somebody with the provider mindset, even though she has a decent job and a bank account, just like she said. So it's not about that. It's about double standards, and it's about having 1 foot in and 1 foot out when it comes to this kind of new world that we're living in, right? And this is where I start to go on about the dowry. It's like, listen, you got bank accounts, you got this. I sure hope you've been saving from age 18 to 27, you know, if you want to get married. Now, we got Ben Shapiro in here somehow. This is, you know, this is the TradCon of TradCons. Sassy says, I've apparently been single since Christmas, but only knew I was single for the past month. Oh, God. Oh, well, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about that. You know, I hope it wasn't too bad. Hey, we've all been there. You know, I would play that song, Everybody Plays the Fool, if I wouldn't get copyrighted, but that is an appropriate song.
Xenophobia, anti-Semitism, and violence.
Most
Let's scare out on the dot. You are on my way there. And well, you know, enjoy. Take your time. Take your time looking through the fruits, you know, and vegetables and all that.
scholars consider the manosphere to be a far-right pipe.
See, okay, and she just brought up fresh and fit anti-Semitism and violent, and that's what I mean, right? It's like, I don't think anybody was really concerned about that, you know what I mean? But now that they've kind of pivoted into this anti-Semitism thing and all that, it's not really going to help us, you know, and it's just going to make everybody look bad. Yo, JP, appreciate that, sir. I appreciate that a lot. All love, glad to see you live. Thank you, man. Braylon says, in her mind, her money is her money and your money is our money. Exactly. And that's the problem, right? So this is the issue. And we kind of seen this sort of same mindset from that last person we watched, Manifestel. You remember that? The one that literally told us that she was advising women to cherry pick from traditionalism, to cherry pick from feminism, and it's all about what best suits you. And then she was really like mischaracterizing no-fault divorce and all these kinds of things. She's kind of doing the same thing. I mean, maybe not as bad as her, but it's this kind of thing where she's sort of painting men as like this enemy that she has in her mind. And we're all these people that want to go back to patriarchal times. But it's not true. It really is about trying to at least make things fair if we're going to have all these equality things going on. You know what I mean? At this point, we heard it all. Hit me up, Sassy. You know what's interesting? Robert, Sassy, you guys are both pretty big gamers. You guys are big gamers. At this point, we heard it all. Yes, we have. Now, Spencer, you show up. Yeah, it's a tough game out there, Robert. I'm sorry, man.
Pipeline. It continuously targets and indoctrinates young people into its ranks. Women are definitely members of the manosphere, which sounds a little oxymoron.
Okay, so she's probably talking, okay, so this is the Tradwife, right? So she's going to say, what's funny is she's going to say that this is part and parcel of the manosphere, and she thinks this is part of the manosphere, but she hasn't delineated in her mind that this is just another form of conditional femininity, which a lot of outward progressive feminists do at the same time, right? This woman's asking for the same amount of money and you know, high provider stuff. This woman, you know, may very well Steven Crowder you know what I'm saying? God forbid. And they really are both gynocentric. This is a gynocentric person, especially in this economy. The progressive feminist is a gynocentric person, and they have the same demands, yet she doesn't see it that way. She sees this more as a pick-me who is, she thinks this is what the manosphere is asking for, and everybody's asking for this.
Moronic, just as they are members of other far-right radicalizing groups. But young men, especially, are considered the target audience. These men are often white, lower to middle class, and Western. But most importantly, a lot of those who join the manosphere are vulnerable. Now, vulnerability does not mean blameless or valid. Vulnerability means...
Well, it's interesting. So vulnerability, that's an interesting concept. And the question is why are they vulnerable? You know, is there something in our society or culture that's going on that makes them that way? Women will be women. Yep, absolutely. Big shout out to you, man. Welcome in, Coke Addiction. Coke Addiction has entered the stream. It sucks to be Crowdered. Fairly typical, though. You know what's funny? Hillary Crowder put up an interesting tweet today. Let me see if I can pull that up for you. And, you know, this is probably... Damn, how do I spell Hillary Crowder? Was that 2 L's or... Oh, there it is. All right, we done did it. Come on. Don't tell me she deleted it. Damn it. It was about like... Oh, here we go. It's this right here. And the reason I hold her to this standard is because, you know, Crowder, I see, like, this is someone they're talking about being virgins by marriage, and they are more traditional in the religious sense of the word. So she posts here, adult women are not children. Disciplining a wife is not a husband's role. And she spelled that like a dinner roll, which is kind of funny. Your spouse is your equal, not your child, right? So you're equal here. This kind of flies in the face of the sort of religious rhetoric, especially the Christian understanding. And correct me if I'm wrong, of the sort of biblical hierarchy, as they call it, right? Which she would have been part of. I mean, she kind of says religious stuff every now and then. But this equality right here is what makes that Tradwife sort of issue become a problem. And this is a conditional femininity, and this understanding and this sort of belief of hers is what led to the end of the marriage. I mean, Stephen, when he got married to this, he was going off a different assumption the whole time she was believing this, and then it ended, right? And then we got Rollo in here right on cue. This is why you're divorced. I just thought that was interesting, right? Can you zoom in on her boobs? No, I cannot do that. I don't believe I can. Every man is vulnerable if he marries. Yeah. I mean, hey, listen, and I know it's not typical, but we heard Tyrese Gibson mention this in that last video I did, where he said he talked to women who were paying child support alimony because they were the breadwinner. That's really the only other option to where, that can happen. Braylon Barnes, it's kind of funny. They want a 50-50 partnership at the same time they say they don't do 50-50. Yeah, exactly, right? And that's really the thing that she needs to internalize and understand, right? Like, that's the core of why the manosphere won't go away, of why it keeps popping up, right? She needs to roll over. All right, here we go.
Means that a person is at risk or susceptible to something. In this case, that something is radicalization. The manosphere targets young...
Radicalization. So she's doing it there, right? So she's painting the whole thing with one brush stroke. and saying that it has like this collective goal of radicalizing men. It's not that. I mean, the goal is to just explain to men what the new deal is, where you are over leveraging yourself, when you are leveraging yourself, and to basically have a choice in what you're going to do. And the reason I say that is because at child support, I met so many guys. I meet guys today when they ask me what I did or if we talk about it. I meet guys today who still don't understand how the system works. That guy I did the lifestyle shoot with for the products I was working on, he's a young guy. He's early to mid-20s. And, you know, I went to the skate park behind the child support place, so we're talking and this and that. And when I was explaining to him some of the stuff, he was like, he couldn't believe it. He didn't know that's how it worked. And I swear to God, that was like 90% of the guys that came and talked to me didn't know how it worked. My goal is just for people to know how it works, so that when you decide to make the decision, you just know what decision you're making. You know what I mean? I mean, I get it. Some people are going to walk through the fire. I might walk through the fire and be like, all right, this is it. You know, whatever. This is the risk I'm taking. What I didn't like is people that they didn't know that was the risk they were taking. On top of that, in a 50-50 partner relationship, the man is still doing the traditional role. If he didn't, she would have no interest, aka Brifault law. That's kind of the thing that we're contending with, and that is what the sort of red pill intrasexual dynamic purists would say. I don't know if I'm entirely convinced of that. You know what I mean? I guess it depends. I don't want to say you're wrong about that. That is the thing that I hope maybe we can focus on more. Like, is it possible? Is it possible? Yo, Caesar, big shout out. Thank you, sir. I'll give you some American money here. Biblically, the Bible has more warnings about women than Satan. Wow, that's actually that's interesting. I never realized that. So I believe it. You know, and I think a lot of that comes from men over leveraging themselves. You know, right? You can have a kingdom, and if you choose the wrong woman, or you go about it the wrong way, the whole thing can be gone, right? So a lot of it comes from that.
Vulnerable people who are seeking connections and, more importantly, answers to their issues. Maybe their partner has broken up with them.
I don't think marriage is for me. Women, you've been radicalized. Exactly. God, and like those words are used on purpose, right? Radicalization. It's about tying you to something that they can immediately say is dangerous, that can immediately be demonized, right? So it's not coming from a place of empathy. It's coming from a place of whipping you back onto the plantation. It's coming from a place of making you fear. It's a veiled threat. You know, we're going to call you radicalized, and we can send you over to those secret black sites and have you tortured and all these things. The TradCon feminists will use the law in reputation destruction as much as any woke leftist. Exactly. I watched them take over my church and pushed out the leadership that supported them. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. You know, I had that discussion with some of those folks on Wednesday. It's on my channel. And they're Christian guys, so they're kind of talking a little bit about what they experienced at the church, and not just marriage counseling, but counseling through the church, and just kind of how it was. So I mean, I believe you when you say that, because a lot of those folks seem to have similar sentiments. Yo, Robert, again, big shout out. She's into radicalization. That might be a very true statement, actually. There might be some 50 shades of things going on over here. So now she's going to talk about reasons why guys might find the manosphere. So let's hear what she says. I'm gonna even reverse that a little bit.
More importantly, answers to their issues.
Maybe answers to their issues.
Their partner has broken up with them.
Okay, their partner broke up with them.
They have never had sex before. Maybe they see a fast-changing world that is drastically different to what they were promised, in a sense.
So, okay, a partner breaking up with them, they never had a partner or whatever. But, when I think like of a lot of MGTOW, it's not just that. It's also getting ramrodded through, the child support court, family law court. It's not just that she cheated on you with someone else and broke up with you, and then you lost half your retirement amongst many other things while she's living with her new boyfriend. You know what I mean? It's not just like a simple everything was cool and friendly breakup, right? So she's she's kind of not presenting some of the real issues guys go through and kind of just making it seem like, you know what I mean? Like it's just these kind of run-of-the-mill things everybody should be sort of mature enough to deal with. Yo, thanks for the buck. That's a real American dollar right there. Big shout out to that. Big shout out to that. I will use that wisely. God, do you remember what $1 used to buy you back in the day? I went into a McDonald's fairly recently, and we were going on some trip, and I remember looking at the prices, and I haven't eaten McDonald's in a long time because it messes with me, but God, it's crazy. So, I don't know who's getting fast food nowadays. It doesn't make sense.
In such men, the manosphere sees
Oh, come on. We had to use this imagery.
perfect soldiers for their ideology. And the men, in turn,
For their ideology, right? And see, and the manosphere is largely a collection of guys comparing notes. There might be some people putting forth an ideology, but we don't have like a very well-defined one, which is part of the issue. So she's, again, painting it as this sort of lock and step thing that has like a very specific ideology, which is like anti-women.
see the manosphere as some sort of father figure. One that
A lot of them didn't have dads, you know, it's going to go off that. Well, then we got to ask ourselves, why are these people looking for a father figure? Why didn't they have dads? You know, like, yeah, I mean, sure, there are some of them that have bad dads, but, you know, there are also a lot of moms out there that practice parental alienation and made it so that they didn't have dads.
is committed to them and one that guides them.
Within the manosphere, netizens have a choice to either take the red pill or the blue pill.
Make sure you post a link to your video. You know, I'll do that just to put in the chat so you guys can check it out. We will look through comments and stuff later. Let me post that here and the YouTubes. I should probably paste that in more than the YouTube for the Twitch people, actually. Oh, look at those beautiful red and blue pills right there. Very nice. Paste. There we go. Now everybody has it. All right.
The blue pill is essentially useless. If you
Oh, by the way, Robert, thanks for the further donations. Appreciate that. We got total of $8, man. Thank you. It says message retracted. All I see is the world. Braylon, I'm sorry. You might have to put your comment in again.
take it, you remain blissfully ignorant, forever locked into the matrix. But the red pill is more exciting.
By taking it, you agree to wake up to reality and realize that society is anti-male, anti-masculinity, and anti-you. Every system, every woman, every liberal, leftist, Coca-Cola, DEI is actively working against you.
I wonder if she will at least acknowledge that, you know, maybe some of that has a little bit, you know, bearing in truth, right? And it's funny because what that makes me think of is kind of how the metaphor of the red pill is used, right? And I kind of have like a little bit of an axe to grind with the praxeology folks, right? Because what they'll say is red pill is just a praxeology. But really what red pill is a rejection of gynocentrism. So they're saying that the matrix is a gynocentric order and you've been conditioned to have a certain set of values. Now, you can take the blue pill and stay in that world, or you can take the red pill and essentially break out of this gynocentric conditioning that's been foisted upon you, right? And it is true to some extent. I mean, as guys, you know, we're growing up and it was all women this, women that, women take half the jobs, men are still expected to be the providers. You know, we've seen the whole Me Too thing happen. There really is just a ton of things, right, that make us believe that, yes, there is a sort of gynocentrism leading the culture, basically, right? So I wish she would kind of acknowledge some of that stuff as legitimate, or actually think why we do that isn't just, oh, we're just, you know, lost in our emotions and we didn't have a dad to guide us. But if we all had good dads, then everything would be fine. It's not like we'd have any of these problems or iniquities in the law. Funny when feminism accuses the manosphere of ideology. We are a reaction. Exactly. That's a very, very good point. The manosphere is simply men just readjusting to feminism. The problem is they don't like how we're readjusting because they'd rather men still be taught and stay in the role of utility, you know, for them, to keep them happy, to enable them, to let them have a job while also still expecting men to be providers. And so men, after enough people have gotten screwed, enough people have seen their fathers get, dragged through the divorce court, lose custody. I talked to this guy, Father X. We're going to be reacting to some of his videos. Probably next week we're doing Father X. And Father X spent $160,000 on a 4-year custody battle. And if you add in the child support he was paying at that time, it takes him over $200,000, right? So there are these very, very real issues. I was autocorrecting something. Oh, got it. I'm not done yet. Still figuring out what I'm not allowed to say. Oh, God. Robert. Oh, gosh. I didn't notice that.
By watching someone like Jordan Peterson, you find yourself faced with this choice. Stay asleep or stay woke.
See, I don't know if Jordan Peterson ever came out and was like, hey, take the blue pill or take the red pill. He had a kind of interesting, interpretations and sort of esoteric understandings of different biblical and mythological stories to kind of help us, understand some archetypal things about men and women. But then, yeah, later on, I'd say, once he got sort of taken over by Daily Wire, he did kind of go a little bit harder. But they came after Jordan Peterson, way before that. So I don't know if he's sitting there and telling people using that kind of rhetoric. This is more of an Andrew Tate style rhetoric.
And Jordan knows a lot about being woke, apparently.
Oh, I didn't sleep that month. I didn't sleep for 25 days. I didn't sleep at all.
Joshua Thornburn studied 2 popular subreddits attached.
Men are practical and problem solvers. Okay, so we got Incel Exit, X Red Pill. X Red Pill is an interesting subreddit. It's kind of interesting to just hear that. I found a really good comment that I actually wanted to share this with you guys. I was going to make a dedicated video for it. I might still do that. Let me see if it's in here. I'll just show it to you guys now just so we can read it. Oh, God. Oh, here it is. Damn it. Where the heck's the comment? Did I not send that picture? Oh, damn it. Well, it's in my phone. I'll have to send it. But it was essentially in the sort of vein of originally MGTOW was this thing that you had to understand, and you were kind of there for a bit, and then eventually people then moved on to like the rest of their lives. Basically, they moved on. I'm gonna send the pictures to myself right now, and we're going to read this because I took screenshots of it. And I don't think that's entirely wrong, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, I do think guys finding this, understanding it, shedding the gynocentric programming, and then coming back, and just like, I don't know, later on, just kind of accepting what the world is at that point, and then trying their best to navigate it. You know what I mean? Like, I think that is something that's okay. Let's see. Help family relations. Okay, here it is. And just real quick before I read this. He said to clean your room and to listen to narratives. Still waiting to JP to say whether or not he believes in the literal resurrection of Jesus. Yeah, I will always remember that. When he came to Sacramento, someone asked him that, and he spent a half hour answering that question. Well, he spent a half hour not answering that question. Jordan is definitely blue-pilled now. Absolutely. Sounds like to me they're mad that they're running out of cleanup men. That's exactly what it is. And the beauty of what the manosphere has done is it created what some people call like the simpocalypse. There's this guy, Angry Guy. I like his channel. And he'll talk about this sometimes, but that 80% of guys that these ladies were supposed to go back to, once they hit 27, a lot of those guys don't want to take the deal anymore. So now they're having a hard time with marriage. Because men are just kind of not feeling it anymore. They feel like they're not getting the value. They feel like it's just, kind of a raw deal for them. So they're trying to figure out what to do now. And that's where you get things like single mothers by choice, the IVF community, and all these things. We should just call them the IVF community. Robert Spencer, I'm a huge fan of Jordan Peterson. Listen, I'm not even mad at you for that. I mean, a lot of us were, definitely in the beginning. But once he got bought out, he got bought out. Sassy Attitude says, Oh, she's responding to Mr. Pitt. If JP does it, then he is allowing the interpretation that he doesn't believe, which has the same effect, doesn't it? Oh, that's an interesting point. Yeah, I mean, if he won't come out and say it and just say, hey, this is what I believe, then people who, assume, maybe you can even say it means he doesn't believe that. I've got a date tomorrow. We're going to watch Matt Walsh's new movie. Hey, that's cool. You got a date. We both got dates tomorrow. That's awesome. Well, good luck in yours. I'm really hoping that you you know what I'm saying, just make it happen. And hopefully we both report back with good news and everything went good. Anyways, to the comment. This was under a video from Thinking Ape. And it kind of wasn't even super related to this, but I found this comment, thought it was really good. Starting to get tired of 90% of dating channels. So this is probably like Colonel Buckshot? This kind of reminds me of Colonel Buckshot. Starting to get tired of 90% of dating channels, RP content, MGTOW content. Most are becoming men shamers, grifters. They talk down to men. However, let women use their nature as an excuse. I'm burned out. And he makes some interesting point there, right? Like this is kind of the TradCon 2.0s. This is the alpha simp, the snake charmers. That they're the guys that are going to shame you for not self-improving and sort of meeting these women's inflated standards, right? So you do see a lot of shame. I mean, Andrew Tate was definitely, a shamer in that sense. Definitely a grifter. I mean, come on. There was some real grifting going on. We got to admit it. Talk down to men, and then, well, that's women's nature. That's women's nature. That's women's nature, which is this sort of interesting thing. You know what I mean? But it's like when it comes to men have a raw side of their nature, and the entire point of civilization is to sublimate our nature so that we can have, a higher ordered society where the arts and sciences and other things can thrive. But when it comes to women's nature, it's like, well, that's their nature. And so, that kind of stuff tends to get pretty tiring sometimes. So he's gotten exhausted with it. He's done with it. And another thing is just might be like, after years of watching this, once you get all the talking points, it's kind of the same thing over again. Nothing's really changing. We're all kind of dealing with it. And then this is the comment. Yo, Caesar, thank you so much. Thank you so much, man. I feel like I gotta, find some better sound effects here. But I'll catch the replay. See you next time, Shah. Hey, no worries. Thank you so much for coming in. And again, thank you again for the support of the channel. We got to get the mugshot framed here in the background eventually. You have a great rest of your Friday night. So going back, this is the comment that I did want to share. And this was a response to that sort of beginning comment of the guy getting tired of it. And so this is from Knight and Green. And he says, trouble not about the clowns, but ask instead thyself, why thou art in the circus. Seems pretty profound. MGTOW was always about moving on. So this is an interesting claim right here. Eventually, to leave this kind of content and contemplation behind is one of the goals. But while most find it hard to even enter that mentality, it is also difficult for others to rewrite their thought process back to more productive things. Take it as an opportunity to make new headway and discover new ground. Self-actualization, yo. A channel called TFM. Is that Turd Flinging Monkey? Someone in here recommended him to me also. Mirror still has some of Turd Flinging Monkey's video essays. They're brilliant and certainly a step up from the quickfire content nowadays. I mean, I agree with that. I think it's interesting that the sort of moving on part of it. And it kind of makes me want to like almost something called like the moving on pill. I mean, I wouldn't want to call it a pill, but just like a moving on sort of thing. A coach kind of has something called the after pill, which I think is pretty much this, frankly. Looks like he's already named it. But it's just about like, once you know this, then what? You know what I mean? Like, how do you not leverage yourself all the way now? What should we be focusing on? How do you be a prince when the princess doesn't want to be saved? What does the prince do? How does a prince find a fulfilling life and these kinds of things? So I might make a video on this just to make another one, but I wanted to share that with you. Oh god. Okay, here we go. All right, so yeah, so we got Incel Exit and X Red Pill.
To the Manosphere. Incel Exit and X Red Pill. They wanted to figure out what inspires a person to join such an ill-reputed group. The most common reasons seem to be vulnerability. People tended to join after facing a devastating breakup, after being cheated on, or after facing constant rejection. Most users tended to have low self-esteem to the point of getting black-pilled, meaning that their fate is to be unattractive and undateable for the rest of their lives. Young people, especially of high school age, are most likely to fall victim to manosphere radicalization.
Robson says, I'm taking off. Oh, well, man, you have a great... Oh, shoot. With another... Let me just shout you out real quick before you take off. Love you, dude. I love you too, man. Swear to God. You're the best, man. I still think about that wig and that gavel. Love you, dude. I'm making plans for my date tomorrow. You're awesome. Hey, man, best of luck on that date tomorrow, man. Pull out the charm. You know what I'm saying? Just go for it. Have a good time. Try not to think about it too much. You know what I mean? Have two conversations. Have the on the surface conversation, then have the sort of like, hey, I like you conversation, just so you know. But you already know how to do this. You've been around the block plenty of times. Thank you again, and good luck tomorrow. Mr. Pet says the prince is supposed to run around riding motorcycles, shooting guns, and being an all-around badass. Yep. And that's a great way to put it. And it's like, listen, if the princess doesn't want to be saved, then you know what? If the princess asks you to do something like stop riding a motorcycle and stop doing this, the answer is not even no. It's just like letting wind blow from one side of here to the other side, right? Like that's it. That's really it. Good luck on your dates, gentlemen. Thank you. Appreciate that.
They're less likely to have life experience and therefore less likely to be critical of what they're consuming. The most interesting reason someone might join, however, has to do with gender. In my last video, I talked at length about ideal masculinity and how unobtainable it is for most men. Men are constantly fed...
See, now this is interesting. This is interesting because this reminds me of like the Barbie standard, right? I always wanted to do a breakdown and an analysis of the Barbie movie. Because in the beginning of the movie, you have this kind of homage to 2001: A Space Odyssey, which was a Stanley Kubrick film that came out in the 60s. And what happens in the beginning of that film is you have a bunch of chimps, right? Like you got a bunch of... And basically they're just living like a wild, just as animals. And one day they see this, I don't know what they call it, the artifact or whatever it is, but they see this big black square rectangle looking thing. And the monolith. It's called the monolith. And basically something about seeing that monolith, there's like an eclipse. One of the monkeys just like, something just happens. His mind just, consciousness enters the fray basically. And the next time they're being attacked, this monkey picks up a like bone and basically uses it as a weapon, and it gives them this advantage, and then they use it against the other tribe of monkeys. In the beginning of the Barbie movie, it's the same thing. They're all out on the savannah. It's like a 1-for-1 copy, and they're all playing with their dolls. So you have a bunch of little girls, and they're playing with their dolls, which is a mothering, nurturing instinct basically, and girls are kind of brought up and conditioned to be good mothers. Then what happens is one day they see this monolith, except the monolith is Margot Robbie, a very like beautiful, attractive woman in high heels, and the quintessential Barbie is what they see. And when all the little girls see that, they pick up their little baby dolls and they start just smashing them and breaking them, and it represents like them not wanting, living up to this beauty, wanting to live up to this beauty standard, wanting to be like a Barbie, not concerned so much with motherhood. But then the rest of the movie is basically about how this Barbie ideal created a standard that was so high that it eventually collapsed in on itself, and it made, childhood and adolescence miserable for a lot of these women. This is basically a 1-for-1 mirror of that, right? She's going to talk about masculinity, especially when you think of like a Andrew Tate hyper masculinity, right? It creates this sort of hyper masculine, almost Barbie-esque ideal for men that the fact is 90 point something of men aren't going to live up to that. It's something that you can paint, but once it becomes so bad and the gap becomes so big and it becomes so tough to live up to, it sort of collapses into itself, which is kind of what we're seeing here. And maybe even seeing a little bit with the most recent iteration of the red pill, with this whole sort of Bugatti driving, everybody's a high value man, it needs to be one sort of thing. and it kind of goes back to that guy's comment. He's just exhausted. He's exhausted with the shaming. You know what I mean? He's been tired of these things, and he's done with it.
Contradictory and confusing ideas of what it means to be a man. Using role theory, we found that the standard of masculinity, aka patriarchal masculinity, is defined by chaos and anxiety. Anyone who tries to be the perfect representation of a man is likely to be pulled in 50 different directions. And
it's interesting too. I mean, and I think all of us, like, you know, whoever dated a woman, sometimes you date like a woman who's very attractive, and then you find out how insecure they actually are about their looks. Like, I remember when that first happened, when I first saw that in someone, and I was like, God, that's really strange. I don't know why. How could they be this anxious and insecure about their looks? They're a very attractive person. Now, you can probably tell how that ended up, because that's a red flag if I ever seen one. But it's interesting. So she's applying it this way, but it does also apply the other way to women.
Stretched thin. Even if they reach the standard, it's highly likely that they'll still be considered failures in one department or another. That is the very nature of the patriarchy.
As much as you might hope that I'm pulling all of this out of my ass, there is a precedent for this theory. Numerous people within Thornburn's study expressed an almost sort of dissonance, where they want to achieve patriarchal masculinity, but they notice that their real personalities and interests are sharply different from what they're expected to be. Even when reading the newsletter submissions from my subscribers in my last video, it became clear that men don't feel secure in their performance of gender, and often feel like they're 20 steps behind everybody else. So in a broad sense, the patriarchy refers to...
You know what? I'm going to put that in as a poll. I know some of the folks left, but okay, we got no, 60% no as far as the red pill needing to change. Oh God, maybe I can, so I have to close end poll. Yes. And then start poll. This one might be kind of a waste. Do you feel insecure in your performance of gender? There we go. Now, it's an anonymous poll. It's an anonymous poll.
The system that positions men over women. Men are considered dominators, leaders, and superiors by the patriarchy. But if the patriarchy...
Also by other women, you know what I mean? We've all dated women, right? I mean, we want you to choose the restaurant. You're supposed to lead. 50 Shades of Grey, all that kind of stuff. So, it also comes from that. Let's just be fair. MGTOW is moving on. It frees men up from expected role. Yeah, absolutely. And this, see, and when you look at that, it's kind of, it's obviously in direct contrast with the more recent manosphere self-improvement maximalists, right? The self-improvement gurus, it's like, no, here is a very defined expected role. This is what men should be doing. Men, blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, it also feeds into the gynocentrism. So that's the alpha simps and all these kinds of things. That's how you get, that's the TradCon 1.0, but that's also the TradCon 2.0, right? So MGTOW, frankly, I think is the one at the end of the day it's having the most impact.
Patriarchy benefits men by making them superiors, then why are they so unhappy? I mean, if that was really the case, they would be the most successful, happiest people in the world. I know a man who's insecure and broke. Well, firstly, men do receive privileges from the patriarchy. There's the obvious ones that are associated with, say, the workplace, like the gender pay gap and the fact that women are more expected to sacrifice their career for children than men are. But there are also inconspicuous privileges that men don't really think about. While they are expected to be attractive by, masculine standards, they aren't socialized to view beauty, low weight, and bodily grooming as their sole purpose. Their capability and decision-making skills are not questioned as much as women's. Their sexual promiscuity or history is never put on trial like women's.
Okay, so let me try to think of what she's saying. When it comes to grooming or something like that, not really. I think most guys, at a certain point, when you do start dating and stuff, it's something I think most men start to take note of with themselves. I mean, dressing better and doing all this kind of stuff. Promiscuity, I mean, and that goes into desire. It's not going to scrutinize as much because it's, for most men, I mean, it's tough making it happen, sealing the deal, if you know what I mean, where women can just walk out of their house and just, you know, hey, anybody, and then that's it. That's it. Tuesday's done. So that's where that comes from.
And they're more likely to be represented in higher positions than women are. But just because someone's...
That could also just be because of good old-fashioned hard work. I mean, we know that, you know, we know about the wage gap and stuff. Wow, she is way off concerning looks. Looking at the self-improvement groups, yeah, especially. And then like things like height right off the bat, you know, broad shoulders, these kinds of things. And it's like, you know, I mean, that's where a lot of these people do end up kind of black pilled or whatever, is because they look at that and it's an issue for them.
Privileged doesn't mean all of their life's problems are suddenly solved, especially because there's potentially a bunch of other...
And it's funny, she'll call men privileged, but it's like, I would like to see her turn the same magnifying glass towards women. And the truth is, like, I really look at it as like only a very small percentage of people are actually privileged. Like, even if you're a woman, like, yeah, okay, maybe in some ways, you know what I mean? But a normal woman's life compared to like an attractive woman's life is kind of going to be two different things. You know what I mean? And same thing with the man, right? It's like, there's that guy, you know what I mean? And his life his experience with women is going to be different than somebody else's. So it's kind of the same thing, right? Like, I don't know, to be fair.
Systems that may make their life harder. For instance, despite receiving patriarchal privilege, men can still be oppressed by, like, capitalism or classism.
Sassy says, dudes are privileged. Can you give us some more about that and just tell us like about all the privileges we have, and then we'll give it a fair shot here. I want to give you a fair listen, Sassy. And I will also ask you to name a few women's privileges if you can think of some. If you can't think of anything, that's okay. Y'all don't have to worry about getting jumped. Okay, Sassy, I'm sorry, but that's absolutely false, because most of us guys are not these like big guys. We're normal guys. Like, if we're walking somewhere late night, we absolutely do have to worry about getting jumped. And to be honest, most violence is men on men. It's not men on women. I saw this video of it was a stabbing in San Francisco, you know, and it's like, I can't remember, but they were both, you know, doing something or whatever, and the guy was just trying to protect the woman, but the guy ended up as the one getting stabbed. And the other guy who did the other thing, he just looked at the woman and he didn't do nothing to her. That's where patriarchy privileges women, by the way. If it was different, she might have gotten one too. So men not having to get worried about getting jumped, I just don't think that's true. In fact, most of the time, we have to be way more wary of that because we're more likely to get punched in the face than a woman is.
Men of color face systemic racism. Men can be exploited by the war machine. During their tenure in the military, they can become disabled and come home as decorated veterans only to be then discarded.
Now, women, that's not to say women don't have that. I mean, women, you know, they do run the risk of getting like SA'd and all these kinds of things. So the risk is there. But like, the fact is, anybody walking in the dark at night by themselves, the vast majority of us got a risk of something happening to us, whether it's getting a beating or something else going on. And it's very few guys that really don't have to worry about that if they're very strong. And even some bigger dudes, like I hear bigger guys sometimes say that people will try to start stuff with them just because they're big. So they gotta take stuff a lot of the times. I was jumped twice. Yeah, I mean, I was jumped before. You know what I mean? Like that, that happens, you know? And, you know, that's why people go with the concealed carries now and all that. Braylon Barnes. The thing is, men have to work and women can choose to work because when men fall on hard times, no one is coming to save us. Women always have a support system. That's another thing. Are there more homeless women or more homeless men, right? Like, what they will do is say, like, you know, typically, you know, women are forced to kind of be in this role because they're, you know, make money or whatever in this thing. But it's like most of the guys who don't even hit that, no one's coming to save them to be like, okay, you can live in this house as a wife or something like that. It's like, no, you're just homeless now. And then that's it. You know what I mean? And guys, let's all be, you know, respectful. I mean, everybody's being respectful, but just, you know, Sassy's taking the other side here. So, you know, we got it. We respect it. We respect it. The thing is, men have to work. Yep. Let's see. Dude, last summer nearly had a trio decide to take me off into the woods and make me disappear forever. That's very scary. Very scary indeed. But again, just to be fair, you know what I mean? This is something that happens to men too. You know what I mean? So, you know, can I give you a stat on that? Probably not. I mean, I've heard the one about violent crime or violence happening more to men when it comes to being carried off and kidnapped and things like that. You know, a lot of bad things happen to a lot of people, and it's just really about being small and not bigger than the other person. I don't hike alone anymore. I don't want to hike alone. Like, as a guy, I don't want to. You know what I mean? I get it. I really do. And when I go hiking, it's like I got the bear mace. I got, you know, the this thing and all these other things, because like I understand how vulnerable I am. I'm by myself, and it's like people can come get you. You know what I mean? Like I'm not this UFC guy. Also, if a man or a woman is getting jumped, the woman is more likely to get help than men. Oh yeah, that's another thing. And you've seen that with countless videos, right? Where it's like you'll see like a woman beating up on a guy for a while, and then finally like he does something back, and then you'll get like a swarm of guys just come in and beat up that, you know, beat up the guy or whatever. Kind of reminds me of that. How can she slap? That's a good sound effect. Maybe we'll get that in there. But yeah, that's absolutely true. You're in my mind on what are the stats. But yeah, so I mean, you know, I get it from each other's perspectives, right? It's like we look at the other side and we're like, they're privileged. There are very obviously disadvantages on both sides, you know, of the game. I mean, and you know, to give you an example, like, yeah, men get screwed over from the family court, but women can get screwed over too, not just because of money. Like, you know, I remember talking to a woman with a 6-month-old baby, and she came in and, you know, she found out she was only getting a couple of, you know, it was like $120 a month. It was really low. And she's like, why is it so low? And I was like, well, because he's paying child support for his other family. And she didn't know he had a other family until that moment. So it's like she got gamed so hard, and now she's got this kid. She's only going to get like $100 a month from this guy, if that. And there's a very obvious risk there, right? So it's like, you know, women got it hard on that end of the deal, right? And I mean, so it's kind of why society was very strict about these things for a while. But, you know, yeah, just to be fair. Yep, I had cars drive by and none stopped. Yeah, and that's what it is. You know, that's what it is. They don't want to get involved in that. Probably even less people would stop now than they ever would. I mean, I hate to admit it. I kind of have that attitude towards things. I don't want to be that guy, but you know, I live in a very litigious state. Things happen. Maybe it's not worth it, you know? I think the last I got attacked was like in the summer of 2018. It was 4 guys. They took my wallet and my shoes. God, man, 4 guys. That's, you know, and that's just you know, it just sucks when it's like that. But yeah, we've all had that happen, man. We've all had that happen. I mean, yours sounds pretty bad though. The wallet, I haven't had the wallet or the shoes, so thank God. I remember back in the day, like, you know, you remember you'd see the shoes tied up together and they throw it on the top of the telephone line? It was rough out there, man. Sass says, the problem is from either side, there are those who want to work the game, and we cannot tell who is gaming until we are gamed. Yeah, I mean, that's the sad part, especially nowadays, right? I mean, because, you know, on the man's side, men typically find out they're gamed at the other end, right? When the bait and switch happens, and then, you know, the divorce happens, whatever, right? Women tend to get gamed, I think, in the beginning, especially if you're in a relationship for 4 or 5 years, and then suddenly you realize the guy doesn't want to marry you or something like that. Then the women will start tripping out, right? It's not, you know, usually like with the guy, he gets rejected in the beginning. He's like, well, F you then, or whatever. And there's like this anger that comes out, which is bad. women have that, but it happens in a different way. And that's where you get the sort of quintessential crazy ex key in your car and everything like that. Because then they feel like they got used and they got gamed. And now that, you know, the progressive feminist side are living in the best of their both worlds, taken out of marriages, going back on the deal they made, talking about equality like Hillary Crowder here, men are starting to respond in kind with gaming on their end. And so it's just a back and forth. And there are always these people that were just terrible. And so we are in a very unfortunate, just like down spiral of like negative chaos, which possibly the dowry can help, possibly.
By the American government. They can become homeless and face increasingly violent anti-homeless laws and measures. And they can get discarded by the very system that favors them if they fail to meet its strict standards. Trans men, queer men, impoverished men, disabled men, any man who doesn't fit into the tiny, tiny box of patriarchal manhood is often bullied, beaten, emasculated, or in some cases killed, oftentimes by other men. Men are denied their full humanity by the patriarchy, even though it claims to love them. You might be thinking, okay, so? Men aren't able to reach perfect patriarchal masculinity. How is that a bad thing? No one should strive to be patriarchs.
Also, this is also another, like, I guess you can say kind of her admitting, right? Like with feminism, with progressivism, it's impossible to reach that patriarchal standard, right? So it really has been deconstructed at this point. It's in pieces. It's on the ground. It's not coming back. They don't want it to come back. So right now men, you know, this is where MGTOW starts making sense. This is where the prince needs to figure out what to do, since the same song and dance, the same story ain't working anymore.
And yes, exactly. No one should want to or be able to embody patriarchal standards. But that doesn't fix the fact that men are still expected to. Gender is considered a social construct.
So that's interesting. Men are still expected to. Now, my feeling is that she's gonna say they're still expected to because of the patriarchy, which is imposed by other more powerful men. But I do hope she kind of talks about some of the expectations coming from women, right? Women also expect men to do that, which is where the sort of, you know, dissonance or the confusion comes in. It's not letting me put on Braylon's thing. That's what they did. I found my shoes 2 days later when I was out shopping with my mom. Okay, yeah. So you saw him on the telephone line. Yeah. Oh man, that was classic. Hey, if you don't mind me asking, what kind of shoes were they? Were they K-Swisses? Were they Chuck Taylors? Man, my nose is itching. I'm just curious. Were they Jordans? You know, like what was the shoe of choice there?
It varies across communities and is influenced by society. Even so, gender still impacts how we are viewed and treated. A lot of people want to be affirmed in their gender, whether they're cis or trans. And because we have this desire, we often work towards aligning with our gender. We perform in certain ways to be read as our gender.
P.J. Burke and Lou Alexander consider identity to be a continuously operating, self-adjusting feedback loop. Individuals continuously adjust behavior to keep their reflected appraisals congruent with their identity standards or references. Men are told that the goal of their gender, the goal of their identity, is patriarchal masculinity. This is defined by hierarchical power, sexual obsession, isolation, brutalization, toughness, and misogyny.
No one should strive for this.
And misogyny. See, it's like you can't have traditional masculinity in their view without it also being a misogynist at the same time. And this feeds into the we've been oppressed since the beginning of time kind of narrative there.
Things. But if men refuse to embody patriarchal masculinity, or if they fail to embody it, their entire purpose, existence, and self-esteem are endangered. This leads to role overload and role conflict, which in turn might lead someone to extremes in order to realign themselves with ideal standards. Take Matt Rife's actions, for instance.
Okay, so now we're back to Matt Rife. I really don't know what he did. I know Dan the Man kind of knows.
His insecurities are on display in much of his work. In order to realign himself with patriarchal masculinity, he designed an entire special around misogyny and dude bro comedy. Obviously, this was disgusting and wrong. I'm not campaigning for men to be able to embody patriarchal masculinity. Why would I do that? I'm trying to make sense of a
conversation we need to have too is really about misandry, right? Like they'll bring up misogyny, no problem. And then she shows this comedian and whatever, it's misogynist stuff, but it's like, how many times have you seen a female comedian being openly misandrist? And, you know, it's just like, all right, that, you know, that's part of it. There's nothing we can do about it. We just tend to accept it. And then that's that. So I don't know, if a guy wants to do some comedy and say some stuff that she's going to view as that, well, we're also looking at a bunch of misandry the other way.
complicated pattern. There's a very clear disconnect between a boy being born and a man who joins the manosphere. Somewhere in that disconnect, there's sometimes anger, confusion, anxiety, depression, aggrieved entitlement.
I hope she goes into what creates that disconnect or what's partially responsible for that.
And vulnerability.
I don't think she can, though. It's just going to be like, well, women are free now. We have rights. And for some reason, men just can't seem to deal with that.
Sometimes. Not always.
Sometimes.
Always?
Not always. No. Sometimes. That means sometimes.
The outlet for these emotions are not handled in a healthy or valid manner. Other people are faced with gender role overload and
I hope she gets into what an outlet that is a healthy and valid manner is in her view. I would like to know what she thinks that should look like.
And role conflict constantly.
Because if guys are going to be in the manosphere, they're going to have a bunch of locker room talk because they got to go somewhere to talk about it. You know what I mean? And just as much as women have it on their site. I mean, if you ever seen like female dating strategy, I mean but they're pretty bad. You know, I'll give them that. I'll give her that too. But men need to have an exhaust somewhere.
But don't join far-right groups or commit violent acts. There's really no room for
Okay, yeah, don't do that. But what should they do? What should they do?
excuses. But there is room
Can't they at least just be in there talking, whatever?
for a much too long critical analysis of it.
The manosphere is constantly referred to as a far-right pipeline, but really it's more like a pipeline to itself. You're hit in the face with violent racism, anti-Semitism, misogyny, and transphobia, right?
See, this is what happens. Like a few bad apples in the space say some things like this, and then suddenly it's like the entire manosphere. It's like anti-Semitism and it's racism and it's this and it's that, but it's really not true. And it's like what we're here for is, first of all, comparing notes on the raw deal and discussing the iniquities that are there. And that's why I hope men could more collectively focus on that. But it seems to lead this way. And I mean, you got you see a pivot now. I mean, Myron, put a tweet, and he's going to be doing a podcast with like Nick Fuentes and Sneeko. And we know what Nick Fuentes is famous for. So that kind of gets that allows people like this that we're watching to be able to say that's all it is. You know what I mean? The isms keep going on. Elena's Bar Fitness. Hey, Elena, good to see you again. I met Elena after my discussion with the folks on Wednesday, and she's got a channel where she talks about some of this stuff. So, guys, go give that a visit. It's good to see you in here.
And the gates. The community doesn't chew you up and spit you out towards more right-leaning groups. The manosphere just absorbs you into itself. Sarah B. considers the manosphere a form of grooming. And this makes sense. The very basics of grooming starts off with a predator choosing a vulnerable person, often a child. And said child may be isolated, lonely, and suffering from low self-esteem. The very same traits of those who are most likely to join the manosphere. A predator is able to pinpoint the issues of their victims, the things that make them easily seducible and compliant. Predators push against insecurities. They build what initially feels like a stable sense of trust. And all the while, they slowly escalate the tension, pushing you further and further until you end up in a place you never anticipated going. But even as the violence mounts, even as you question your place within this hierarchy, you can't leave. They love you and trust you so much. They're the only person on earth who does. Why not?
Oh, that's awesome, Mr. Pitt. You already know who they are. Legit.
Fall in line with their every thought, command, and belief.
Pipelines are inherently seductive. Without the power of seduction, they are not successful. But the manosphere feels different. It might as well be crack in the 80s because nothing has ever hit the tower of addiction so hard. Young people, not just men, who are feeling broken and confused and unlovable and alone, come into the manosphere with a burning question. Why is this happening to me? And the addictive nature of the community is that it pretends to answer in a way that both satisfies you and saves your feelings. It's not you that's the issue. It's women. It's different women, people of color. It's everyone else but you or me.
It's kind of funny because like the manosphere has been kind of taken over by self-improvement maximalists, purists. And it's funny because she's saying all of these people are saying, at the end of the day, the advice the guys do get, I mean, to give the self-improvement guys some credit is that, well, it's all on you. It's all on you. It's all on you. My issue with that is that it just tends to become like a hammer and everything looks like a nail, right? So I think she's saying it in a way where the guys go there and suddenly it's just like it's everybody else's fault. But really at the same time, they're like, oh, it's your fault. You're not doing the work. So it's just kind of interesting to hear that. So she's saying it's a cult. Yeah, I'd say basically. And listen, guys that are like, there are some predatory people out there. I mean, there's some grifters out there. You know what I mean? And people like Andrew Tate, I mean, he's good at gaslighting. I mean, he'll show some of the text messages of him talking to women to get them to do the webcamming stuff. That's part of that. You know what I mean? But to say the whole thing is that it's just, I don't think that's right. It doesn't pretend to answer, it answers the questions. Yeah, and a lot better than the mainstream people are answering it, which is why they end up there. I mean, when the marriage counseling fails and the dead bedroom doesn't get better and all these things, then they end up at the manosphere and they give some straight answers. RP has helped a lot of guys. Very true.
If the manosphere was a contained universe and you could enter it by door, I would argue that the bouncer of that door is a pickup artist. Pickup artists are not a new digital phenomenon. Their popularity actually peaked in the 1970s as a part of the growing seduction industry. Men would host workshops, publish books, and even join study groups to help other men up their game. Just listen to this infamous passage of Eric Weber's 1970 book, How to Pick Up Girls.
You're walking down the street, minding your own business, wondering how the hell you're going to meet the next payment on your car, and suddenly you spot a girl. The girl, someone so absolutely sexy, so downright delicious looking. You've just got to see more of her long, lean legs, her fine, rounded breasts, her high, firm behind.
You know, it's interesting. This is 1970, right? So this is like right after sexual revolution. That's interesting that she goes this far back. I don't know if that's an actual pickup artist book or not, but this is men dealing with sort of the opening of traditional roles and okay, yeah, you can get some. Now the game starts to kind of matter more a bit.
For an instant, you even consider rape.
Of course she goes to whoever this obscure guy is and has to paint that,
Yeah, this is page 1, by the way. Third full paragraph. Weber doesn't give...
Yeah, I mean, and this is just going into a sort of like all men are predators thing. You know what I mean? This is where they're getting it from. This is what all pickup artistry is. It just comes from this sort of men wanting to use women. I mean, some guys go there just to figure out how to, what works when talking to women and what doesn't. Also, doesn't help that women will typically choose these types of guys. I mean, when it works, then guys do start asking, why does it work for them, The title says How to Pick Up Girls. Yeah.
Give you a chance to prepare
the pickup
for
artist book. You're
his
right.
terroristic misogyny. It just kind of hits you in the face. At first, this passage seems way more forward than today's pickup artists. I began my descent into this category by watching the infamous Fresh and Fit.
These are the self-improvement maximalists.
Probably heard of them. They are so controversial, so violently misogynistic, that their channel was demonetized within 3 short years. Not to mention the fact that this podcast cost one of them their job with Homeland Security.
You know, and it's just like, they definitely made some bad decisions. Like, listen, I don't know, maybe they're making more money now than they ever did, but the whole Klan thing and the salute and all that stuff, that's what did it in from Myron's side. For that, they'd probably still be there if it wasn't for like that stuff that really wasn't that important. You know what I mean? Boo, PUAs are a terrible introduction to the manosphere. Maybe back in 2012, PUA was a decent intro, but today the prime entry point is a RP streamer. Yeah, PUAs have kind of, they're definitely not that big anymore. You know, let me just give you an itinerary for this. We'll give her a little bit more time and pick up artists, see what she says, but around here, if it's not going anywhere, I'm going to go into men's rights activists because I'm really interested to hear what she has to say about that. I might skip incels and we might go to what do we do? Because what do we do sounds interesting and men's rights activists sounds interesting. So I'm going to give this a few more minutes and I might just forward it here.
And then I moved to Miami, started up the podcast, and they brought me in and they're like, hey, you're saying controversial stuff on the internet. You got to pick one. And then, I ended up going the entrepreneur route.
Fresh and Fit began posting.
Interesting. So he said he resigned. Well, that clip she posted isn't necessarily against the comment that he said. He said he resigned. The clip said he had to pick one. So he chose to resign. So that, I don't know if that's him getting fired.
Content in October of 2020. As if that year couldn't get any worse.
Myron is one half of the team. Before entering the world of podcasts, he had a YouTube channel dedicated to fitness, hence the nickname Fit.
What's up guys, Myron Gaines here from Unplugged Fitness. Thanks for tuning into the video. Today, we're going to talk about muscle hypertrophy.
Myron left Department of Homeland Security out of his own free will to become a content creator. It's a shortcut. Yeah, I mean, I think inherent in the word game is a little bit of that. Like they used to have that phrase DHV, I think demonstrate high value or demonstrating value or whatever. And it's more about kind of leveraging and trying to appear or exploit what it looks like. You know what I mean? So, or like appearing like someone who I guess actually gets the chicks or actually does that. And then you can kind of only keep that up for so long until you can't keep that up anymore. But guys do learn things, how to talk, with women and things like that.
And of course, before that, he was a Fed working in the drug and human smuggling sphere.
I don't know why it's interesting. She has a whole thing dedicated on pickup artists, but if you look at this, it's like, it really is mostly just Fresh and Fit's podcast. So this is more just about Fresh and Fit than it is about pickup artists. I'm gonna skip this over to men's rights activists. I think that'll work a little bit better. All right, let's just skip it over to men's rights. Whatever. Yeah, we know the Fresh and Fit story.
Like pickup artists, MRAs didn't just sprout up with the internet. You can find them as early as the 1960s, parading down streets with signs and microphones. Some MRAs of this time intentionally aligned themselves with the ongoing second wave of feminism. They joined.
Okay, here's men's rights. I agree with you. Fake it till you make it. Most guys don't make it. Yeah, and so I mean that's what it is, and it might work here and there. Eventually, you'll get it. I mean, it's still helpful in a way, but it takes a little bit more than just the pickup artist stuff. No matter what situation, women are always the victim, and men are always the blame, even when men are not involved and are removing themselves. Exactly. Let me just go back on this a tiny bit.
Pickup artists, MRA.
Here we go.
Activists. Let's refer to them as MRAs.
Like pickup artists, MRAs didn't just sprout up with the internet. You can find them as early as the 1960s, parading down streets with signs and microphones.
I like that sign. Men are more than success objects. Right?
MRAs of this time intentionally aligned themselves with the ongoing second wave of feminism. They joined the feminist organizations and made it their mission to challenge patriarchal masculinity, which is good. An interconnected movement is a movement that succeeds. But the same issues that were plaguing feminism during these early waves began to splinter the men's movement. Intersectionality was a concept lost on most of the activists. For instance, a lot of black feminists noted the oddity of black men campaigning against racism and fighting for their rights as men, while simultaneously expecting black women to remain inferior to them. Beyond just race, there were men within the movement who believed that feminism was ruining manhood and was oppressing men. Instead of aligning themselves with feminists to challenge the patriarchy, these men decided that true liberation would come from separatism. They needed a space away from the feminine, which was threatening to soften America.
Now what do you say if we form a new club and call it the He-Man Woman Haters Club?
Decades later, as the digital age took over, this rhetoric remained popular with MRAs. Today's MRAs believe that men are the true victims of systematic oppression. Not even just systematic oppression via the patriarchy. No, they believe that the woke, liberal, leftist, Coca-Cola, DEI feminists have taken all of the power for themselves, leaving men disaffected and alone. The evidence they provide for this is disproportionate military drafts, unfair monetary expectations, and the silencing of SA and DV victims who are men. Now, as the scholars say, let's be so fucking for real. This evidence seems valid, right? It seems justifiable. Men are more likely to be drafted into the military per
I mean, I don't know what she means by more likely. I think we're absolutely the ones that get drafted.
history. They are expected to be breadwinners. And there are people who don't view men as victims of SA or DV or in general. However, MRAs are providing us half-truths. Their larger conspiracy argues that feminism is to blame for all of these things, whereas I would argue that patriarchy is obviously at fault. Let's break this down, starting with the war argument.
One party needs to die, and the other one can vote and not die.
That's why you guys shouldn't vote, in my opinion.
Yeah, here comes the twist. Exactly. I know. I'm waiting for it. One of the downsides of being a dude, draft. Yeah, I mean, well, that's the parody. Let me guess, it's all men's fault. I know. I'm trying to give her a chance. I want to hear her say, a very, very good argument. Let's see what she comes up with.
Why?
Because you guys don't have any skin in the game. Men have to go into selective service when they don't.
A huge proportion of people who are seriously disaffected are men. Most people in prison are men. Most people who are on the street are men. Most victims of violent crime are men. Most people who commit suicide are men. Most people who die in wars are men. People who do worse in school are men. It's like, where's the dominance here precisely?
In my last video, we discussed how men are taught to perform masculinity, especially in the West. This includes viewing themselves... What happened to the light? This includes viewing themselves as soldiers from a young age. They're given toy army men to play with in their youth. Their media heroes are often weapon-wielding violators who round up foreign bad guys. Even throughout history, companies have marketed guns to young boys as a way to become real men. On top of this, boys are socialized to believe in their own disposability. They're taught a confusing cocktail of rage, stoicism, and emotional disengagement. They're taught how to not get too close to anyone, almost as a way of preventing them from getting too attached to the world. And then, when they leave their youth and enter their early teens or early adulthood, they're primed by more nationalistic messages, telling them that good men die for their country. Good men join the army. Good men, true men, don't dodge the draft. Not only do these messages manifest under the patriarchy, which decides how gender should and will be performed, but it comes from other men who are in power over you.
So, yeah, I mean, Dan the man, you kind of got it right there. It's the men's fault. It's the other men. It's this. And, you know, she's basically saying, well, you know, yeah, you don't have to learn how to use a gun, or you don't have to do all these things. You have a choice. You don't have to be disposable. I'm taking the negatives of what she's saying, like the opposites. Okay, yeah, we're conditioned to believe we're disposable. This is like a sort of TradCon 1.0, even a TradCon 2.0 way of seeing things. And it's like, well, the only thing that I can't give her especially is that it's not like men... War, I see war as a necessity, because at the end of the day, we live in a state of nature, you know, as a nation. And since war is going to happen whether we like it or not, and when it happens, you know, we have to go and answer the call for that. So men are typically brought up in this way that might help them be better prepared for that. I mean, that's not, you know, or it's not even about, or not even war, just defending the family or something like that, or your kids when you have them. And she's saying it's mostly a social contract, but I don't know if it's a social construct, if it's more so a necessity of nature that somebody has to do this. But yeah, she just went with it's other men. And it's like, the only other thing she can say is like, you know what, men, you're not disposable. We women have to shoulder half of that disposability. So is she for women getting drafted or not, right? That's the only thing that can alleviate men of this responsibility, would be to have a citizen-wide draft. Wouldn't you be a good citizen, man or woman, that responds to the draft? She doesn't have a cure for this sort of necessity that we all have to go through and deal with, which is war and the other tribe, so to speak. So that, you know, that's where the kind of wishful thinking is coming in. Oh, and girls are given Barbie dolls to play with and a bunch of dresses and superhero. You can be everything you want. Yeah, I mean, we're both conditioned in our way, but she's going to blame the patriarchy for that. Yo, Shadrach, bro, welcome in. Great to see you, man. Now it's just a threat of prison sentence. Yeah, I mean, listen, if there's a draft tomorrow, like, I may not want to go, but we all are going to have to go one way or another. And that's, you know, it's time to pay your dues once that happens. Women really aren't going to have to go. The only parity for women is childbirth. You know what I mean? And women have a choice whether or not they want to have a child or not. They're not forced to do that. You know, so I don't know. I mean, if it was up to me, if men 18 to 25 signs up for selective service, and even though it's to 25, up to like age 34, even if you look at the code now, we can still get drafted. It just depends on the need and what Congress approves. I'd say if women are like 25 and a draft happens, women who are like 25, 27 or above, let's say 27 to 35, those women get drafted too if they don't have a child, because then why not draft them? I mean, they haven't had a child at that point. They might as well be drafted with the rest of us. I expected that much from her. Yeah, I'm going to give it a little bit more chance. You know, I think it would work better if she said, if she would at least give a little bit of room to the men's rights activists' argument. Say, yes, in this way, you know, men are treated unfairly. There is misandry in some places, but I don't think we're going to get that. To her, it all just goes back to patriarchy all of the time, you know. Sassy says, when war happens, if you send all your female, society has no more kids. We understood this eons ago. Yeah, it's exactly true. I mean, there were cultures that had women warriors. Problem is they're not here anymore because, you know, the amount of women that were dying on the battlefield, that society could not replenish itself as fast as the society that had women staying back and most of the men going out and dying and some of the men coming back to then impregnate most of the women again for a replenishment thing basically going on. So yeah, I mean, that's where we're at. We figured that out aeons ago. That is true. Welcome in, Shadrach. In war, I wonder if she would want to be drafted or she will remember that she is a woman. See, that's a good question. I wonder if she'll remark
or other men and over most of us. It wasn't a feminist who created the selective service. And I can assure you that it wasn't a visionary feminist who believes in war and sends men off to die in them.
See, oh my God, I don't know what to do with this, because it's just like, well, it wasn't a feminist who did it, it was men. But it's like the men are doing that essentially to keep the women safe, to keep the family safe, to keep land safe. And if you had a feminist that, let's say a feminist abolishes a draft, I mean, if the rest of the world doesn't agree with war is bad, and they're going to be like, well, we're going to come attack you now. Like, what's the solution to that? The only possible X factor is like technology. If you can get a bunch of robots and drones and they're out here doing the fighting, I don't know, maybe that would work. But even then, you'd still need humans probably nearby for maintenance.
It's a patriarchal person, a patriarchal leader, perhaps even a patriarchal country. The draft goes back to the early history of the United States. When eagles were calling and tea was getting thrown into the harbor and indigenous people.
I guess if she means like a technical legal draft, but I think the draft goes way back further than that, when the government was like, we need a son from every family to show up because we need to get the army together.
Of the land were welcoming.
We need to mobilize and defend or whatever.
Pilgrims to have a nice sit-down Thanksgiving dinner. As early as this, men were expected to be a part of colonial militias. White, able-bodied, youngish men. In 1792, 2 different militia acts were passed by Congress. The first made it so that the federal government could draft from state militias in case of war or threats from indigenous people. I mean, you just had a banquet with them. Why would they be upset with you? Unless the second Militia Act clarified the first, naming free, able-bodied white male citizens between 18 and 45 as required draftees. Now,
I think at a core, this just goes down to, is war a necessity or not? Is it something that's avoidable or unavoidable? And up to a certain point, ever since we've had agriculture in terms of like farming, it seems like there has been war. Ever since irrigation started and we weren't nomads in a world that wasn't very populated, that just followed, different herds of animals. And one group of people started to get a food surplus somewhere, they started to be attacked by other people, and it made a military and an army necessary. And, we still have not moved past that. It doesn't look like we're moving past that. No one's really put a solution for that. So if war is a necessity and people generally don't want to go, then you have to have a draft or some kind of mobilization effort.
Why do you think these parameters were set? Let's use our thinking caps. It's the 1700s.
That's a great point. I love archery, by the way. And back in the Middle Ages, England, the guys stayed after church for archery practice. If you want to keep going back, we could probably go back to the beginning of at least the beginning of human civilization, where you got private property and like, no, this is my farmed food and whatever. And as soon as that happened, you get like Sargon of Akkad, and he starts conquering, most of like Sumer and Uruk and Ur and all these places. And you get like the first empire, you know what I mean? There's this warrior class, and they're either going to take over and make these villagers their slaves and to pay tribute and taxes. And if you don't want to be a slave, you want freedom, then you got to either fight back, you got to be as good. It's what creates this perpetual, it's why the US has nuclear weapons. It's why Russia had to figure out how to get them. It's why other countries are like, no, China wants nuclear weapons now too. Because we all know what's going to happen the minute we start to relax a bit. Once we relax too much and the other country has been, biding its time and doing what they're supposed to do, they're coming over here.
Is realistically before the major waves of feminism took place. Drafts before this was also dependent on male-only soldiers. It's the 1700s. Feminists are not in charge of the government.
Pakistan's a great example. Listen, I was in Pakistan in 2018, and everywhere you go, you see billboards and stuff for the military, because most of their border is right there with India, and they've had about 3 wars so far. It's just a constant threat. And gender roles are very, very defined, because all men know that can happen at any time. I know you're referencing nuclear weapons, but just me being there and looking at it and seeing the role that soldiers and military has and how it affects the culture, it's because that threat of violence is so close to them. We in the U.S. are kind of, this is where you could say we got some privilege. Because geographically, It's not easy to mount an attack on the U.S. when you got the Pacific and the Atlantic and everything, you know, over here. So we've been lucky enough to not have a direct war on the homeland for a while. It's just been mostly, you know, proxy wars in other places.
And it's the 1700s. Feminism as a word did not even exist. Who are the only people with civic rights at this time? Able-bodied white men. Okay, and why is that? Because people of color, immigrants, women and disabled people were considered undesirable by the country and therefore unworthy of rights. All right.
The unfortunate thing is this has to do with power. The reason some people have sovereignty and others don't, or why they have rights and this is because of power, you know. And back at that time, you know, this is post-industrial revolution. This is after discovering the New World. The New World's discovered. It's taken over. It makes these empires extremely rich, and they're fighting against each other. Germany, you know, or like the Dutch or whatever, and the English and the Spanish and the French, Italian, whatever. You know what I mean? Like they're all busy rivaling with each other. So they're going out there and they're taking over, and their strength is just so much more, you know, than these other people's, and they're able to subjugate them. And that's just, you know, the rule of nature right there. In Korea, all men are forced into the army at 18. You know, that's an interesting thing too. Korea is interesting because they're dealing with a lot of this. They got a low birth rate, and the men and the women are very split there, especially amongst like political lines and stuff. And one of the things is like women's at 18 can start pursuing their career, but men have to do this draft for a couple years. So it kind of stops them from being able to pursue the same careers that, you know, women can pursue. So women have a little bit of this advantage over men at that point. And it's just, you know, it's obvious kind of like what the issue is. They need to do something to give, either put the women in the draft too, or give men an equal starting point at that. Now it's from within. Yeah, I think if you're talking about U.S. and the threat, listen, I think about this a lot. If there was a civil war in the U.S., I mean, a civil war, of course, is always a disaster for any country. But I think the one thing people aren't entertaining is, like, if you have two very defined sides, like, you do realize other countries will start arming and giving support to one side and the other. And that's what will eventually destroy the country. Because when one side starts to lose, it's going to become a hell of a lot more tempting to take help from Russia or to take help from, you know, the EU or whatever it is. And then you'll have these very defined sides. They don't want to give up. The other countries love being able to support this because they know that you're just kind of destroying yourself from the inside. It'd be really bad. Well, in a native population that uses guns as entertainment, you never know if they would take offense if you flew in somewhere. Yeah, very much so. That's true. Geography and demography form our destiny. That is true. It reminds me of this book I read back in high school. It's called Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared. Oh, God, I can't remember his name. I want to say, I don't know if I'm confusing him with the CEO of Chase. I want to say Diamond, Guns, Germs, and Steel. It was a good book. It's just, he's answering the question, like, why is it that, you know, the Native Americans kind of ended up in the situation they ended up with when the colonists arrived? Like, how is it that they lost? And Guns, Germs, and Steel is like a big Jared Diamond. It is Jared Diamond. Oh, maybe I'm confusing him with Jamie Dimon. Anyways, yeah, that's a good book. That's a good book that explains a lot of this. But essentially, it goes down to geography. It goes down to what crops were available. It goes down to, you know, what animals were available to be domesticated. You know, like the horse in one place, and maybe they don't have that in the other place. And all these kinds of things. Yo, Arthur, welcome in, man. Shout out to you, man. Appreciate seeing you here. Even British and France went to war with each other, and it lasted 112 years. Yeah, I mean, it's just the name of the game, unfortunately, you know, and a lot of people's position are dictated by geography. The only X factor is technology. Technology is always the X factor. And when one person gets that, it's like everybody else is now trying to figure it out, espionage it out.
And specifically,
So, I mean, she has a very simplistic way of looking at this stuff. Like, unless you can sit here and be like, this is the answer to war, this is world peace, this is how you get world peace, you know, and then that's it.
specifically for, let's say, white women, what was their responsibility and their expectations at the time?
The home front.
Why is that?
Because the patriarchy determines women to be more capable of caregiving and homekeeping than combat. So
See, it's really biological necessity, right? Like, this is before birth control. And then this is technology, again, to me, is always the X factor, right? And the way the economy works based off of new technologies either allows for different roles for women or not. Like, the economy we live in now with the technology we have allows for women to do a lot more stuff and allows for men to do a lot more stuff too. But back then, you know, women were very much limited by their biology in a way that maybe not so much now, because, you know, they can be on birth control or control and they're gonna get pregnant or not. And they're less leveraged in that manner.
women weren't drafted. They were expected to work and raise the children at home while the men went and fought.
Okay, so white able-bodied men were considered from jump to be the only people capable of defending the country due to white supremacy, ableism, and patriarchy. So that rules out feminism, but why did these men have to go to war? Why not a group of presidents, or why not Congress? Why civilian men?
I don't know. I guess maybe civilian men.
Well, there's not enough of presidents and this and that, and there's a lot of civilians, so that might have something to do with
are
it.
deemed more disposable than like a president.
Why? Why though? Why?
Because they don't have the wealth or the power.
Right. And why do you...
It's with great power comes responsibility. And if you have a well-ordered civilization and you have, let's say you have different positions, those different positions are in control of different, levers of power. They're seeing things. Maybe they're privy to state secrets. They're running the strategy. I get it. Like, okay, I get what she's saying. But the fact is like, you can't just throw your entire intelligentsia into the front lines. And then, you're left with people who are just working as artisans or craftsmen or farmers their whole life and didn't have time to study the politics and have a long memory and understand what happened 100 years ago with this country and what the, geopolitical, international, strategic position and the long game is for the country. Some people need to specialize in doing that. And if you're going to send them all into the front line to just get taken out, the country's going to lose its brain, essentially. And then the rest of the civilians are just going to get picked off by the people with the better strategy.
You think our government would do that? Why would they sacrifice young men, someone's child, someone's father, all in the name of war?
Because even though men are considered privileged by the patriarchy, the ones who benefit the most and who have true power over all of us are those at the top. They gain wealth and land from participating in wars, but are too cowardly to do so themselves. And so they prime young men from birth to believe that fighting useless wars for a country who does not actually care about you is the only way to be accepted and self-actualized.
See, and I listen, that second part, almost makes sense. I can get where guys now feel that way, especially if you live in the way you live now. It used to be there was a deal, and we're all protecting the deal, which was, you get married and the marriage contract actually meant something, legally speaking. You have kids, that's your investment. That's your payback from the society. We kept the borders safe. You know what I mean? You're able to get married, have a family, that's your family. Now, if there's a threat to this sort of order, you have an obligation to go defend that in order to keep the deal going. Now that deal's been completely ruined by feminism, frankly. And if a guy feels like it's useless now, because even though there's, rich people, there's poor people, but still you got something back out of society by participating in it. Now a lot of us don't even get that because the deal's so bad. At that point, I would see someone becoming a passport bro and saying, F this, why would I fight for that? But I think she's missing, the subtlety with that, where maybe MGTOW guys would understand that, or passport bros would understand that a lot better. Sassy, it's like she's trying to logic, but it's just too complex for her. Yeah, I think she's just missing a lot of pieces here. Like her, I think her big sort of home run here is like, well, it actually all goes back to patriarchy because it's other men doing it to other men. But it's like there's very real biological necessities, natural, realities that we have to deal with in order to do this. And it's funny because she doesn't take the, well, women can start fighting now too. If she says war is a necessity, she has to then yield that women should be getting drafted too, which she does not want to do, because the minute she does that, it exposes this whole game, the whole gynocentric game, which she does not want to admit to. Klaus says, well, that video is disappointing. Until now, we can sum it up with patriarchy bad, feminism good. I agree with you, man. I think I'm going to skip incels and we're going to go straight into what we do. And we'll probably spend like 5 minutes there because, I mean, if this was any indication of what this is going to be, I don't know. Maybe she'll surprise us with some good, what do we do? My answer again is MGTOW and be done with it. That's all you can do. That's all you can do. I mean, honestly, Klaus, you're right. Women are actually privileged by the patriarchy because there is more order and security when men are in charge. Exactly. And that's what we're fighting for. That war introduces chaos. Staving against it, keeping the enemy away is to fight enslavement. It's to keep order. And if you have a order in civilization, then everybody can get part of the deal, so to speak. Now we're dealing with a lot of things, especially so much like corruption. We're dealing with this kind of eradication of the gender roles, and it's basically chaotic from within at this point. As I can't remember who said it from within earlier. It might have been Dan the Man. And it's funny too, right? Because it's like, and then the more well-to-do you are, it's like, are the women really over there, having to hold all the babies, or do they have a nanny doing that, and they got servants doing that? She's been missing this whole video. She really has. Yeah, I saw this video and I was like, man, I think we're really gonna learn something. There's really stuff, you know what I mean? Because there is a kind of toxicity sometimes in the manosphere, and we need to be aware of that. And I don't know. I saw that I got 34,000 likes, and I was like, maybe there's something here. I really tried. We're just gonna go to the what do we do part, and then we're gonna see the comments, and then that's gonna be that. Braylon Barnes, patriarchy and misogyny is all she knows. At this point, it's sound indoctrination. Exactly. It's funny because it's a projection, right? All the stuff that she was talking about here and the pipeline and all these kinds of things, it really can be directly applied to her own, sort of ideology of feminism that has indoctrinated her from a young age. It did lead her to a pipeline. You know what I mean? It really is the same. It's unfortunate. Arthur Dunn, unnecessary wars. Freedom isn't free. Exactly. It's not. And it really is a gift. It's like the fact that I can sit here and think about what I want to spend my money on and read books that don't have a direct effect on, my capacity to be productive and make more money. All of that's freedom. And that's only opened up because people together are holding the forces of nature back, which if they weren't doing, like if I was out here trying to survive on my own, I'd be so busy trying to survive, there'd be no time for freedom. Like I would just be firmly stuck within the cycles of nature. And, if we get so lazy and you don't have a draft, you don't have these things, unfortunately, everybody's always watching all the time. They're always testing. They're always testing you. They're waiting. We're constantly getting shit tested by other countries. And when the time is right and the dollar's weak enough and they've bided their time enough, they will be here at the front door. Elena Barfinish, she wants all the authority without any responsibility. Exactly. Deanna Man, my bet is she's going to say smash the patriarchy is the answer. Exactly. Men operate in order and with hierarchies. Women, if uncontrolled, with delusions and entitlement. Feminism. Basically, she wants men to be slaves because responsibility without authority is slavery. Yeah, and it's just the part that's always fascinating to me to see is how, like the men on our side see gynocentrism. She is like firmly just bought into the patriarchy. And it's like, listen, if there was a patriarchy, it was because of biological and technological limitation. Now, I'll yield. When technology got better and birth control came on the fray, it did open up new avenues for women. And from that time, they probably felt like, oh, well, we're oppressed now. Society got so wealthy. I mean, there's a reason feminism manifested in industrialized countries. We were so rich. They had so many servants and slaves to be able to just do everything else for them. Then they wanted to do other things. You know what I mean? Birth control comes along. They want to do other things. So I wouldn't say they were oppressed from the beginning of time by this patriarchy. It maybe for a small amount of time, once technology hit a certain point, I can yield that, but like that's it. And the real mistake here is that they think they've been oppressed for thousands of years. It's just not the case.
Exactly.
The fact is, life was just hard for everybody. Braylon Barnes, so when men protect society, it's bad, and when don't, it's bad. No matter what, L's all around it. This is just save myself gives me least headache. Exactly. You know, I'm just going to go to what do we do? I kind of wanted to see incels, but it's like, okay, Jordan Peterson. I don't really consider incels part of the manosphere so much, to be honest. I think what happened was when they banned incels, they had nowhere else to go. So they kind of ended up in the same forums. But the whole blackpilling thing, I don't know. You know what I mean? They're obviously always going to lump incels in just to kind of make the whole thing look bad. But the manosphere is not just guys that can't get some. You know what I mean? Plenty of guys are freaking married, for crying out loud. And then they came out and got a bad deal on that. Those are some of the guys. And then some of the pickup artist dudes are probably people that were there, and then maybe they figured it out. But I don't know if most of the manosphere is that. I mean, I could be wrong, but women have more options now, and no matter how good they have it, they won't recognize it until it gets financially, economically bad. Yeah, I mean, that's really the unfortunate truth. Once you put enough responsibility on them, then they'll get what it is. I will say I don't think we're going back to traditionalism. I just don't, unless there's like a pretty damn big reset. For the most part, I don't see that being the case. And that's where things like MGTOW are more appealing, I'd say. All right, so let's just go straight into what do we do. And then, we'll look at the comments.
Only then to cater to their deepest insecurities.
Okay, we're back to insecurities.
And content off of them. Because...
Okay, yeah, she's talking about the grifters. And there's definitely some guys like that. I will admit
He knows there's a market in exploiting young men who are already vulnerable. Exploiting them into...
These are the hyper-masculine, self-improvement, maximalist purists.
Watching his boring videos, buying his gibberish books, and following his every unhinged move like a cult. But making videos, downfall videos, of manosphere personalities isn't enough. I need a guide.
Oh God, it's not to help men. It's like, what do we do? It's like, what do we do to take out the manosphere fully? Because we need to save men and get rid of this horrible pipeline that leads them into these extremist, radicalist ways.
You may be wondering, why should I care about this topic? I mean, I sat through an hour of this lecture. I found
this is going to be interesting.
Parts funny and interesting, but the only thing this video has done is make me sad.
Because they're coming away to take your rights away. They're going to take away your rights.
I mean, why should I care about men or the manosphere when they would never return the favor to me? And I get it.
Yeah,
this is actually a very common belief.
Feminist writer Minnie Bruce Pratt states, "How are men going to change? The meeting between two people where one opposes the other is the point of change. But I don't want the personal contact. I don't want to do it. When people talk about not giving men our energies, I agree with that. They have to deliver themselves."
There are women who feel jilted, abandoned, and dehumanized by men. Women who believe that caring about men is somehow anti-feminist and against their better interests. This actually became more clear to me after I posted my Matt Rife video. There were infrequent yet loud voices in that comment section that derided me for analyzing men's relationship to the patriarchy. They emphasized their lack of interest or care in such topics. They implored me to focus on women and our struggles only. One comment stressed that I was centering men. Another said that these women meaning me, I guess, simply can't understand how censoring men won't save me or them. A few things, and then I'm gonna get out of your hair. What do you mean by these women? Also, I think it's a bit silly to say that I'm censoring men when I have 1 or 2 videos on my entire channel that explicitly talk about men. I have over 30 videos that exclude—
Dear God, we haven't got to what we should do yet. I hate my AI autocorrect. It was texting my neighbor, ask her, can I borrow her bike? But to autocorrect, oh God. That must have went over pretty bad.
Exclusively talk about women and feminism. And in general, most of my nearly 70 videos center the conversation around women's culture and girlhood. Even in the 2, now 3 videos that I talk about men, the
only possible thing I can agree with her on, or whatever that quote said, is that men need to deliver themselves. I mean, yeah, we can't, women aren't going to do it. It's just not their problem. They're not living that experience.
Talk about misogyny and other discrimination. And it's also like, I think we kind of forget that YouTube videos are not full conversations. We tend to think that a YouTube video ending is the end of a conversation. There is a multitude of things that I can't include here, multiple things that, opinions that I have that I simply don't include in my videos because I'm not talking to anybody, I'm writing an essay. Essays are not as whole and complete as academics wish they could be. I want to more condescension and see what so many people are feeling upset about. The pain and fear that women feel for men, the pain and fear that makes them feel disconnected and divested from men, is valid. I understand why so many people are unwilling or even uncomfortable with the idea of listening to these types of videos. I wouldn't want to be told that the victims in their own ways, because how does that make me feel any better? There have been centuries of domination, dehumanization, objectification, all of which are still occurring. Under the patriarchy, women do not feel loved by men, and therefore do not feel comfortable or safe loving in return.
I don't think they can ever truly feel loved. It'll just never be enough, right? Like, it'll only get worse. It'll just be like a societal dead bedroom.
Telling women that they—
basing this off of like, well, we don't feel loved by the other side, I don't know. I don't think that's gonna happen.
Have to work alongside men or even think about men for more than 5 seconds feels like pressing on a wound. Even men in progressive spaces often perpetuate misogyny.
See, even if you're like progressive and you're that guy and you do everything to be like, yeah, I agree, I'm an ally, it's still not going to be good enough. And what this is, where that comes from, is a deeply embedded misandry, is the unfortunate truth about that, right? It's never going to be good enough. For someone like that, where even the progressive guys don't make them feel loved by those guys, I was just saying, like, they're never going to feel loved. It's just never going to happen. That was.
They continue to nurse their own biases and end up hurting people they claim to advocate for. I have no problem admitting that I'm afraid of men. I grew up being abused by a man. I've been harassed.
Oh, God. Here it comes. Here it comes. Okay.
By men. I don't have many fruitful connections or relationships with men. I literally only talk to one man on a regular basis, and that's because I've been able to establish a sense of trust and safety with him. Now, is this fear and hurt valid? Absolutely. But does it convince me of separatism? No. Let's think about this in a different way. I'm afraid of men due to the history of misogyny.
I hope she has, I mean, it sounds like, yep, told you, Shah. Yeah.
And my own experiences with them.
I'm just trying to give it like another 2 minutes to see when the solution comes in. So far, it's been a lot of explaining about like not feeling safe. There you go. She admits to it. Yeah, that's what all this was. Listen, and I mean, I don't think she's like a particularly bad person. I mean, she seems nice, you know. It's just like, I think she's been kind of just bought into the propaganda a little too much. Oh boy, now the victim card. I guess that's all we can see here. Kind of sad. Yeah. And what that does is it really shows that the rest of this is just a giant projection from her own insecurities, honestly, and her own, whatever her issues are. Gosh.
Likewise, I'm afraid of white women due to the history
Oh,
of white
God. Okay.
supremacy and my own experiences with them. White women, as it so happens, were among the commenters telling me to give up on men and focus on sisterhood. Audre Lorde has a book for that, I fear. The fear that I have for men and the fear I have for white women is obviously for different reasons.
Gosh. And, and it's just like, I don't, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, white women and then this and that. It's just, there's just a lot going on here in this. The solution is we shouldn't hurt her more and we need to feel for her, thus agree with her. Exactly. Yeah. So then she can feel loved by us, right? So she doesn't feel loved, you know what I mean?
But the history of abuse, objectification, and dehumanization occurs in both experiences. Differently, obviously, but it occurs nonetheless. And still, I would never fix my mouth to say that I will not include white women in my feminism. Even when I talk about Tradwives, who are extremely similar to the Manosphere in terms of goals and rhetoric, I don't talk about them as if they're some tumor that needs to be culled.
Well, I mean, I think she would have to include white women in her feminism because they're, probably a decent part of the population. And if your feminism is going to get anywhere, you probably should do that.
Experience microaggressions, macroaggressions, violence, and racism from white women who themselves subscribe.
Damn, how did this video become a video about white women? I swear, we were talking about the Manosphere.
To the white supremacist patriarchy. I don't think about leaving them behind because that's simply not how liberation works in my mind. I don't want to pretend that white women don't exist. That doesn't help me. I want them to learn, lock in, and do better. And I try to make this clear through the videos I make. I explore the perils of white feminism. I emphasize the importance of white women holding themselves accountable for their...
I don't know if I can, but I almost want to watch that one about the Tradwife.
Their consistent and thorough violence against women of color, especially black women. I make videos that map out how white people can be misled and harmed in their own way by their allegiance to...
As a white woman, I'm doing better. I am not a feminist. Yeah, I mean, listen, and I mean, things like racism are real in all these kinds of things, but I think what she's just trying to do is like mishmash too many things together at one time. And this is becoming so convoluted. You know what I mean? She should just stick with the men and women thing.
Especially when that system coincides with classism, ableism, and so forth.
Oh my God, Dan, your comment was right on time. I remember, Shah, all the isms, and then, wow. I just got to hear that
armed
again.
In their own way by their allegiance to white supremacy, especially when that system coincides with classism, ableism, and so forth. Likewise,
ableism. So we got the ableists too. Okay.
I will continue to make videos about men and their trouble.
Listen, and then like racism's real, classism is real. Like it's true. There's crony, rich people that will do things to extract money out of people. In a way, and I get it, but I don't know. This is just like a really big mishmash of. Intersectionality knows no bounds. There are an infinite number of categories to divide across, and therefore an infinite number of things to shift blame to. Yeah, I mean, that about sums it up. Honestly, listen, I came here to What Do We Do, and I was waiting for a solution, and it's just, we're not getting one. We're not getting one. Hey, Christianity Unplugged, great to see you, man. Nick, it's good to see you. Nick was in the discussion video with me with the Resurgence of Sanity and Plutarch. Great to see you, man. We'll have to rewatch. See you tomorrow, Elena. No worries. Thanks for coming in and saying hi. Sassy Attitude. Ableism is patriarchy. See you tomorrow. Yeah. I think we've made it pretty far. Let's go to the comments. Let's just go to the comments and see what they say. I'm genuinely curious. 34,000 likes. Just to give you guys an idea. Like this is the society we live in. 734,000 subscribers. Like the truth is she represents the mainstream. Like this is the mainstream. You know what I'm saying? All right, here we go. Women haven't created anything. A woman created him. Okay, with the help of a man. I mean, did you do that by yourself? Or was there a seed, like a kind of thing that you needed to get the created thing going? You know what I'm saying? Not to mention that, I mean, it's like when you put a seed in the dirt, you got to water it. You got to keep it safe from predators. You got to make sure it gets enough sunlight. You got to make sure it gets all its nutrients. So while you got this baby in the oven, I mean, is someone not helping you eat and do all these things? And then when the baby comes out and, the baby's vulnerable, is someone not helping keep both of you safe and do all these things? I mean, both people are integral in this creation process. My brother has fallen down this rabbit hole. Oh, here we go. This is from Queef Correa. So she's a concerned sister. My brother has fallen down this rabbit hole, and honestly, it's gotten to a point where he tried to convince me to become a submissive woman for men. I'm a minor, and he knows damn well what men have done to me. Okay, I wonder what that is. It goes so unbelievably deep that men like my brother are now destroying their relationships. I mean, it sounds like men like her brother are just tired of putting up with the bullshit. This is the guy going MGTOW. Like, I don't talk to him anymore due to how he treated me. See, and he doesn't want to talk to you because she's got this victim story about how he treated, you know what I mean? It's like there's no relationship to be had here, unfortunately. It's all about how you were bad, and she's going to gaslight him into how he was allegedly bad and oppressed her, and now he needs to do all these things and walk on eggshells to like make her happy. It's so upsetting and disgusting how the manosphere acts like it will solve all their issues. In reality, it breaks down the only good things they have, leaving them more lonely and bitter, sadly. Can this not be said of feminism as well? Can this not be said of feminism as well? You know what I mean? I think there's that stat with like a lot of women are projected to not be married or whatever in the future. I mean, you can say the same exact thing. It's like a total projection. Jordan Peterson in a nutshell. How can you say you don't like me? Because first you have to define you and don't and like me. That's actually a pretty funny comment. That is Jordan Peterson. It's like when you ask him if he believes in like the literal resurrection. Everything I've learned about Fresh and Fit has been against my will. That's probably true for a lot of people. Jordan Peterson having beef with my boy Elmo should already be the end of his street cred. All right, here we go. We got a guy. As a male victim of domestic violence, I agree patriarchy and the way women are seen as being weaker, quote unquote, was a huge factor in how I couldn't get support. Many of my male friends have the view that the equal rights, equal fights mindset and blame me for not taking action against it. Taught me a lot about how patriarchy is reinforced by a lot of people, to be honest. Well, I don't know if I would put that to, it's like patriarchy is just this kind of other word for like traditional conservatism at this point. And it's like, I can see how like, I don't know, a TradCon 1.0 would look at it that way. But, it depends what a solution here is. I mean, the unfortunate reality is as men, for the most part, have to, I hate to say abandon their traditional roles, but it's really got to become something different. Like the prince figuring out how to live when the princess does not want to be saved. One of the biggest minor ironies is them using blue and red pill referencing a movie created by a trans woman, a population they hate. I don't even know if that's necessarily true. I mean, do you think that's true? Do people in the manosphere like hate trans? Like, do manosphere guys wake up in the morning and like hate trans people? I think a lot of people hearing this that are like progressive would be like, they absolutely do. But I've read red pill stuff for a long time, and I never woke up and thought like I'm angry at a trans person. Or that like why would you be like if a woman wanted to become a guy and live and experience like a guy, like sure, good, if you want to do that, you know what I mean? It's like they're not taking anything away from me. Ableism. Let's see. Somehow we went from the red pill to white supremacy. Yeah. Well, then we went from white supremacy to ableism. You know what? Let me just look up ableism just to make sure I'm not thinking it's the wrong thing. It is what I thought it was. Discrimination in favor of able-bodied people. Okay, yeah. I see, and this is the kind of thing, like, you got to be careful to engage with this. Because it's like you're dealing with all these terms, and you might say something that really, like, angers the wrong person. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's almost set to be like a series of traps and like bear traps that you might walk into, and suddenly you step on a landmine of something. So if there's any people affected by ableism out there, I do apologize. And I don't mean to make light of the ableist struggle. Braylon Barnes, to be honest, feminism freed men. They no longer our concern or priority. That's really exactly right. And that's what I mean when I say, like, what does the prince, do? That's really our only concern at this point. I mean, call it the after pill, call it just moving on. At this point, the rest of this is noise. And it's like men just focus on, what can you do with what's left here? How can you enjoy your life most? If you want a family, what's the best way to do that without over leveraging yourself? You know what I mean? And really, we're just at that point, patriarchy equals traditional relationships that women say they want. And that's the most confusing part about it. Because, a lot of those guys, especially like the sort of blue pill guy, like the blue pill progressive guy who agrees with this, when they finally get to a relationship, I mean, a majority of those women, at least in my experience, a majority of the women I've met have all been attracted or wanted certain things, like the man leading and doing this. I'm going on a date tomorrow. When it came for the restaurant, literally her words were like, "Oh, just tell me where to go, whatever." She wanted me to choose. And that's just how it is. You know what I mean? It's very rare that a woman's like, "No, I'll pay for my coffee." Dan the Man, I don't hate trans. In fact, they help me with my sport bets. Oh gosh. Yeah, I don't think anybody does, you know what I mean? Or even people in the LGBT community. Like, my opinion is that that's just how biologically they are. Like, I don't want to wake up and put somebody down for being that way. But, it's like for these other people, like, they have no problem using those communities for, like, their own benefit, In anything you say, like, they're going to find a way to twist it to make you seem like the bad guys. It really is almost like a language game. Surrogacy. Rolling on the floor. Yeah, I'm just gonna look at a few more of these comments. I'm a man, cis, straight, born and raised in South America. I'm always surprised about how the manosphere and the misogyny are so pushed and accepted in some circles. A friend once said, "You can't have female friends if you can't take them to bed. Remove them from your life." The other one said, "If you show your feelings, you're weak and women won't like you." I mean, listen, this part is for damn true. Like, you can be friends with the women, I guess, that you're absolutely not attracted to. In that case, she will probably be attracted to you. And then you might actually want to friend zone her because you don't want to be in a relationship with her. But when it comes to a romantic thing, and this is a woman that you have feelings for and you guys are in a thing for, like, or you want to get at her like that, being friends and friend zoning yourself isn't going to help. And, you're just going to be miserable. You might as well just tell her the truth, and she can either reject you and then good. Then you can just move on. This part is actually true. And I mean, we've seen plenty of women say that themselves. Like, if they see their man crying, or if you're complaining, it does something to them that makes them less attracted to you, right? This is failing the shit test. The shit test is about making sure that you're not doing any of this, right? The problem with these kind of people is that they buy a doctrine and need it to be right, or they won't feel accepted anywhere else because they think everyone else is against them. I mean, again, this can apply to feminism. I dodged all that manosphere stuff because I have enough good female friends in my life. I have my mom, the women in my family, and I can see everything they say is objectively a lie. Okay, I don't know. It's just like, I think there's a point to be made about not getting too deep into the rabbit hole, especially with the grifter type stuff. But there's no denying that there are some truths here that men do need to learn, and that does help men. I once heard a great line from someone on YouTube discussing masculinity. Masculinity is an imaginary finish line that keeps moving, depending on the man you're talking to. Okay, if they refuse to use women's inventions, they shouldn't be posting at all. The first computer programmer is considered to be Ada Lovelace. Oh, there you go. Okay, so you got a woman inventor. I once replied to a Facebook prompt asking what books would be a red flag if you saw them on your date's shelf. I said Jordan Peterson. A lot of women will also be like, oh, if he listens to Joe Rogan. The avalanche of vicious, aggressive, and threatening responses I received from men, oh, I'm sure they were just so vicious and aggressive, didn't seem to help them realize they were proving my point very effectively. We'll do two more. My confession is that I didn't know or understand who Jordan Peterson was because my dumbass kept thinking they meant the author James Patterson. And I'd go, now what the hell do you mean that old man that wrote all those books is an incel? You shouldn't vote because you don't have any skin in the game. Ah, yes. Women famously aren't a part of society. Well, you know, there it is. It's all kind of the standard feminist stuff. I mean, I think we've seen enough. I mean, this again just further proves, you know, just kind of the other side of this coin and some of the stuff that they, you know, hold on to pretty hard. And kind of why the manosphere exists. We all know why it exists. We've been reminded of that. Oh God, I don't know. I'll be honest. I was really hoping that there would be more in this. Like when I saw this, I was like, damn, 34,000 likes. This looks really good. Like this might actually be like a very honest, fair to both sides thing. And it almost started off that way, and then it just kept missing the mark by like a lot. Buy Rich Cooper's soap and get all the women's. Is he really selling soap now? God, that's a little extra. I'd rather buy soap from Big Herc 916. You guys ever heard of Big Herc 916? He's been selling soap for a while. And he's from Sacramento. And he's a pretty chill, down-to-earth guy. He just talks about stuff. And he also talks about hygiene, but it's pretty funny. This Big Herc 916 right here. I like him. At this point, the only way you win at this game is to not play at all. Yeah, that's it, man. That's basically it. I mean, yeah, you know, you can try to be an Andrew Tate Bugatti boy, you know, private jet flying, whatever. And yeah, you know, okay, yeah, you'll get chicks and all that stuff. But again, it's like, look at him. Look at him. The end of the day, it doesn't matter if he was Andrew Tate. The lawsuits are still there. He's still going down. Women are still coming out from those same women that are attracted to him are still coming out of his past to say he did all these things. And he probably did do all those things. I mean, I'm not here to defend Andrew Tate. That guy has done more harm to the manosphere probably than anybody. You know, maybe he's done some good. You know, he put it on, you know, he got more talking points out there, but all right. So Tom Brady, you know, Tyrese Gibson, all these guys are going through it. So all you can really do is just try to learn the system as best you can. If you're going to have long-term relationships or heavy investments, especially when it comes to kids, then you just got to think, what's the best way to do this? And like, okay, what does a loss look like for me if this happens with the worst case scenario? And if you can be okay with that possibly happening, then all right, yeah, go for it or whatever. But you know, at this point, all the other stuff, like when it comes to like showing how your love and this and that and all the other stuff they try to use to get you to, I don't know, bend over backwards for women, all that stuff just needs to go out of the window. And it's gone. It's over. Traditionalism's gone. I'm sorry. Like I know I'm a pessimist about this, but it is not coming back unless the barbarian's really at the gate and we get pushed back to a completely earlier form of a lifestyle. You know, I pay no attention to the Tates. Yeah, same here. At this point, and I've unfollowed them. At this point, I'm just tired of it. Tired of the same old clips and this and that. And, you know, he's a hype man. Tate, big ego and mouth was his downfall. Yeah, there's just some hard to deny stuff on there. I mean, you know, it's hard. It's just, you know, like obviously there's some stuff that he says where it's like, yeah, you know, I can get it. I can agree with that. But after it's all said and done now, I think I'm exhausted. That comment really spoke to me that I shared with you guys because I really do feel like the same way. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of exhausting. And I think a lot of people feel that way. And that's why you see like a lot of the creators trying to do something else. But I'm burned out. So, you know, when I think about my channel, it's like I want to focus on like other stuff, you know, if I can, but the whole trying to be the best man you can be for society or for this, like for your, you know, for yourself or whatever, up to a certain point, you know, self-improvement's good. I'm not against it, but it's not the sort of end all be all. Anyways, well, you know, even that video was kind of weird. It was a little fun. So I do appreciate you guys hanging out with me during that. It did not turn out how I thought it was going to turn out, but I do think it was still kind of eye-opening, because sometimes I forget what the other side kind of looks like. And for me, it was a nice reminder to see that. So yeah, tomorrow I won't be streaming because I'll be, you know, out chilling. Next Saturday I'll be here. 28th I'll be interviewing with Paul Elam. And then, so yeah, I'm also going to Egypt now. I'm not just going to Turkey. So early October. So from like the 5th to the 22nd, I'll be in Egypt and Turkey. So I'll be gone for a couple weeks. So I probably won't have any streams, but what I will be doing is taking my camera and taking my little DJI Osmo Pocket 3, and I'll see if I can maybe film some stuff, you know, while I'm out there and get some cool pictures of the pyramids and the Sphinx and all these things I've dreamed about seeing since I was a kid. And maybe I can share them in some of the videos with you guys. Great live stream. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Elena. The Manosphere, better days are behind it. Yeah, I'd like to think that, the stock is low, but someday, if the problem doesn't go away, someday, you know, it'll come back. Maybe it'll come roaring back, but it'll come back in a new way, you know. Braylon, I remember a few years ago when someone asked Rollo Tomasi if the RP became mainstream, he said, "I hope it doesn't. When the RP enters the normies, the message will get twisted and lost." Yeah, I saw him put a clip about that recently too. You know, and back then it's like the RP, it's supposed to be like Fight Club. Like the first rule of Fight Club, you don't talk about Fight Club. And it was just this guys comparing notes, and you had this like little black book, you know what I'm saying? And maybe you'd put a post on the RP subreddit like, hey, this happened this weekend. And the guys would be like, well, it happened because of this, and try this next time. And it would help you. Then it became shock and awe content. And, you know, the guys had to be cool by saying like, well, you know, check this out. Here's what we discovered about you, and gave the women the playbook, basically. So they're trying to get smarter at that and spot this and be like, he's this or he's that. And it's just kind of a cat and mouse game that'll probably go on and on. But yeah, anyways, guys, it's been a long day for me. I'm just grateful to be home on a Friday night. And hopefully it'll be a long day and a long night tomorrow. And maybe I'll be back Sunday and make a video for you guys on some other stuff. So you guys have a great weekend. Appreciate everybody who donated. Big shout out to all you guys. I really appreciate the support on the channel. Mr. Pitt, Braylon, Caesar Quintana, Dan the Man, Elena Bar Fitness, Sassy Attitude. It was a pleasure to see you. SD New for you. All the folks. So all the folks. Klaus, can't forget Klaus. Arthur. Shadrach, can't forget Shadrach. I think I mentioned Mr. Pitt again. Robert Spencer was in there. Enjoy Egypt and Turkey. Thank you. I'm really looking forward to that. Have a good weekend. My birthday is tomorrow. Hey, man, happy birthday to you. One of my good buddies' birthday was today. But we're both, you know, he's busy, I'm busy. But I'm going to take him out to lunch. With most of my good friends, whenever our birthdays come around, we always go spend time. We take each other out to lunch and do that kind of stuff. So I love that kind of stuff. But yeah, you enjoy your birthday, man. Have a freaking great day. I hope you don't got to do nothing tomorrow. I hope you just chill, and then you got like a few $100 on the side, and you're like, what am I going to buy with this? Like, what am I going to buy for me? And then you buy something really cool, and then you get that thing. It's always the best. Enjoy your weekend, buddy. Thank you. All right, guys. Well, take it easy, and I'll see you guys.